Chapter 6:21. The territory of the Chu country was vast and boundless. In the extreme west of the country was the boundless ocean, and there were many islands scattered all over the place. There were a few islands that were connected to each other head to tail, looking like a carp. Hence, they were called the Carp Islands. In the middle of the archipelago, roughly at the place where the carp's eyes were, there was a small island that was a few kilometers in circumference. But surprisingly, this small island was actually covered in a forest of tall mountains. A few tens of mountains were densely piled together, and they charged desperately towards the sky, causing one to be unable to help but have the feeling that this small island would be overturned from the bottom of their hearts. Old Bastard, who was standing under the vines of an ancient tree, was frowning as he looked at the terrifying hole in front of him that led straight to the ground. A stone pillar had drilled out of it and was pointing straight to the heavens. Its rough surface was covered in traces of the passage of time. It was clear that it had existed for a very long time. On the indistinct lines on the stone pillar surface, strands of blood-colored light extended upward and drilled into the top of the stone pillar. The skeleton was sitting cross-legged, and a layer of bloodline seemed to be interweaving on its deathly white bones. Because of this layer of bloodline, the skeleton gave people the feeling that it was still alive. It was as if it had been exposed to the world for countless years and had endured the attacks of wind and rain for some reason. The amount of divine blood is decreasing. Old Bastard muttered in a low voice. His eyes were cold, and there was a hint of unconcealable fear in the depths of his eyes. Fan Buyu had been killed, and the amount of divine blood continued to decrease. He could feel the smell of death once more, and it was so heavy that it made it hard for him to breathe. He turned around and left. Soon, the natives of the Carp Islands received a reminder from the Lord Priests that the evil god was about to escape. If they wanted to maintain the continuation and inheritance of their race, they had to start a large-scale sacrifice and use the power of their flesh and blood to suppress the evil god. All the tribes on the archipelago instantly lost their cheerful voices. Those who had the qualifications to sacrifice themselves had to be young and strong men and women. They held their children and knelt in front of their parents. After deeply kowtowing, they got up and left with large strides. Their faces were filled with grief and determination. This was something that no one could avoid since ancient times. As long as their parents and children could survive, they did not fear death. One after another, the natives, under the lead of the priests, came to the side of the stone pillar with pious expressions. After paying their respects, they jumped down. The large hole in the ground was like the open mouth of a monster that swallowed all of them, not leaving a single trace behind. Old Bastard coldly looked at everything that was happening. Although the effect of raising was becoming smaller and smaller, it was the only method he had at that moment. If he could kill the Fiend Emperor outside G City, he would not have to face such a difficult situation. Damn it! After cursing, Old Bastard turned around and left. The raising still needed some time, so he could not delay any longer. Living was such a wonderful thing that was worth being grateful for. One had to make the most out of every second and not waste even a moment of time. 2 months later, the feeding finally came to an end. At the cost of the lives of millions of natives in various parts of the Carp Islands, the depleting trend of the god's blood finally stabilized. Old Bastard heaved a sigh of relief, but he could not truly relax. He was very clear that this kind of stable state could not be maintained for long. The natives on the island wouldn't be able to carry out a second sacrificial ceremony within 100 years. He had to find other ways to increase the production of god blood during this time. Half a year had passed since Fan Buyu's death, and everything had been calm. Perhaps he had been too cautious. Perhaps it was time for him to return to the land of divinity and demons. A man and a woman walked on the waves of the boundless sea. Wherever they passed, the surface of the water beneath their feet would calm down like a flat mirror. Yu Chi held onto his arm, a puzzled look on her face. My demonic path forces have spread all over the world. but we still haven't been able to find any trace of Old Bastard. How did your Majesty know that he was hiding here?" Chenyu smiled. "It was Verbius who sent me a message." Yu Qi frowned. "Verbius? What influence is that? How come I don't know anything about it?" Qin Yu explained, "Verbius, strictly speaking, isn't a true organization. It is formed by many wandering cultivators, but the requirements to join are extremely high. They accept assassinations, information purchases, and other services." Yu Qi wrinkled her nose. "Is your Majesty trying to say that I don't have the qualifications to know anything about Verbius?" Qin Yu helplessly shook his head. "I really don't." He and Yu Qi were extremely cautious. Even the demonic path didn't know of their whereabouts. Yet they were still grasped by Verbius. Verbius was powerful, at least in terms of information. It couldn't be said that it was unparalleled. This information about Old Bastard was Verbius taking the initiative to express a favorable impression of Qin Yu. Although they were called Verbius and claimed to be able to take on any job and kill anyone in the world, there were still certain limitations. For instance, the demonic path's holy sovereign. The status represented by this title was something that Verbius absolutely didn't dare to touch. Of course, it was also possible that no one could afford the price to kill the demon sovereign. Between the horizon and the sea, a mountain range appeared at the end of one's line of sight. As one approached, it continued to extend downwards, becoming increasingly thick and solid until several islands appeared on the sea. Yu Qi pursed her lips. She softly said, "Is this it?" Qin Yu nodded. He turned around and smiled as he stroked her hair. "Don't worry. Just stand here and wait for me to return." With a flick of his sleeves, seawater automatically rose up, forming a ball of water that wrapped around Yu Qi. "Pah!" The ball of water fell into the sea and vanished. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu faced the islands and strode forwards. Faint traces of invisible aura spread out from his body, communicating with the world and touching upon the lines of the rules. Strong winds rose between the heavens and earth. There were no clouds in the skies above, but it gradually darkened, as if all light had been banished. An invisible aura covered the entire archipelago. The monster beasts that ran through the mountains and forests all whimpered and fell to the ground, shivering. In the native tribes, the priests that had stepped onto the road of cultivation widened their eyes, and their complexions rapidly paled. Shwa! In the palace, Old Bastard's eyes shot open, his face filled with anger. There was no need for a reason. His intuition told him that the one who had arrived was the person who had killed Fan Buyu. How did this person know of this place? However, there was no longer any meaning in thinking about this. Old Bastard took a deep breath, a cold light in his eyes. If this were anywhere else, he would have fled without hesitation. But the Carp Islands were his roots. If this place was destroyed, he would die without a doubt. In other words, there was no way to retreat today. He could only fight. He took a deep breath and stood up. Old Bastard took a step forwards and appeared in the skies above the Gourd Islands. His sharp eyes looked towards the horizon. At this time, a white-haired youth was stepping on the waves. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his powerful aura gradually harmonized with the world. Demon Sovereign! Old Bastard cried out in alarm. Qin Yu lightly said, "My injuries haven't healed yet. I will use you all as whetstones to temper my will and survive this death tribulation." He raised a hand and punched out. The world shook and a wild strength swept out like a raging river. Looking ahead, the sea instantly split apart, forming an abyss. Old Bastard roared. "Demon Sovereign, if you let me go, I am willing to join the demonic path and serve the Holy Emperor Palace." He pressed his hands forward, and black fog gushed out from the void, condensing into a thick barrier. Dong! With a dull explosion, the black fog caved in. Then strength erupted outwards, tearing the fog apart and causing it to tumble away. Old Bastard drew back, his face pale. but his eyes were wide open and bright, filled with wild joy and disbelief. The demon's sovereign had personally arrived, so he wouldn't be so bored as to joke around with him. Old Bastard also felt a sharp killing intent from this strike. But although this strike was strong, it was far from the level that the demon's sovereign should have reached. It was true. The demon's sovereign had indeed been injured. Just like Fan Buyu, Old Bastard instantly firmed his resolve. No matter what price he had to pay, he had to kill the demon's sovereign today. This was the best chance in their lives to change their destiny. He turned and soared into the skies. Qin Yu frowned. He never thought that Old Bastard would have such a reaction. His feet moved, and he chased after him. In the skies above the Carp Archipelago, two explosive sounds rang out. The sound waves were like the roar of thunder. From the giant hole that had swallowed millions of natives, a suppressed and excited gasp suddenly came from it. At the top of the stone pillar, the skeleton with the bloodline entwined on its surface opened its mouth and emitted a silent howl. Old Bastard's approaching body exploded in midair, turning into a mass of scarlet blood energy that was instantly absorbed by the skeleton. Organs, flesh, and blood. Hair, the scene of the skeleton growing back into a living person, was completed in several breaths of time. At this time, the one who appeared in front of them was a middle-aged man. His body was tall and strong, and slaughter energy rose from his eyes. He slightly bowed and placed a hand on his chest. Please allow me to formally introduce myself. My name is Wei Zongyuan, a descendant of the Great Wei royal family. Unfortunately, I have lost the face of my ancestors these past years, so I had no choice but to conceal my name. Your Majesty should be the only person in this world that knows of my origins. If I am killed by your Majesty today, please erect a tombstone for me and leave behind my true name. Of course, if I am lucky enough to kill your Majesty, I will also collect your corpse. Qin Yu nodded. I promise you. Wei Zongyuan stood up. Your Majesty, I have offended you. He took a step forwards. It was like 1,000,000 mountains had fallen down. The entire world trembled, emitting deep groans. Kacha! Kacha! Countless space cracks appeared. Then they twisted and separated from space, condensing into a black saber in Wei Zongyuan's hand. Shua! The saber cut down. Qin Yu stiffened. A numb feeling appeared between his eyebrows and rapidly spread outwards. What a terrifying saber strike! He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Space shook and countless translucent lines appeared. They were pulled backwards by Qin Yu. Then, the phantom of a great bow appeared. The translucent lines released countless motes of light that condensed into an arrow. He released his hand, and the arrow shot out. It was condensed from the killing intent of the world's rules and possessed an absolute attribute that could tear apart all. With a heaven-shaking explosion, terrifying fluctuations smashed into the heaven-pointing stone pillar. Its surface seemed to be covered in traces of corrosion, but the truth was that it was indestructible. It hummed and trembled, releasing a formidable suppressive strength that controlled the fluctuations within a narrow range. Wei Zongyuan looked down at the bloody hole that had appeared in his chest, a look of admiration on his face. The Holy Emperor Palace's demon body cultivation method can temper the mortal body into a treasure that can communicate with the world and directly mobilize the strength of the rules. It is truly terrifying. It seems that I cannot kill your Majesty with my own strength. He looked up, a crazed look in his calm eyes. Perhaps if I do this, I will no longer be me. I might even lose my dominant position, but I will still live, and I will live forever. In truth, this is enough. In order to live, I am willing to pay any price. Wei Zongyuan smiled and flew to the top of the stone pillar. He knelt down and pressed his hand down. Many, many years ago, I discovered you, suppressed you, and absorbed your flesh and blood to survive. I know that you hate me to the bone, but this is our best chance. You can regain your freedom, and I can live on. We can each take what we need. If you are willing, Release your strength and become one with me." As his voice faded, countless cracks appeared on the stone pillar below in the blink of an eye. For tens of millions of years, the natives had raised them countless times, maintaining the production of god blood. At the same time, this blood had permeated into the mighty stone pillar. As the master of the native bloodline, he could control their life and death with a single thought. He could naturally borrow this bloodline to infiltrate and destroy the stone pillar from the inside. Bang! Blood devils shot into the skies. In the blink of an eye, they formed a pillar of clouds that connected to the heavens. A terrifying and suppressive aura erupted from within, causing one's mind to tremble and despair to fill their hearts. With a loud howl, the cracked stone pillar directly exploded into pieces. A blood-stained skeleton flew out from the massive hole in the ground. It floated in midair, soul fires burning in its eye sockets. These flames were pure gold. They were noble and mysterious, as if they could contain all existences in the world. According to ancient legends, there were spiritual gods in the world, and their souls were gold. This was the skeleton of a spiritual god. In order to reverse the limits of the rules and continue a life that should have withered away, one naturally needed to borrow strength that surpassed the rules. And the strength of a spiritual god was more than enough to accomplish this. Even though this was only a divine skeleton that had died countless years ago, it still seemed to retain its incomparably powerful will. The invisible pressure was like a tidal wave that swept out in all directions. Wherever it passed, even the heavens and earth would tremble. The golden divine fire in its eye sockets fell on Wei Zhongyin, as if it were considering something. Suddenly, the golden divine fire rose up. Golden lines appeared on the bloody bone. In the next moment, with these lines as the dividing line, the divine bone broke into countless pieces. The broken divine bone lost all of its might. This was because it had retracted all of its strength into its soul. The golden soul was like a blazing sun. It released a light that made it impossible for one to look directly at it. In a trance, one seemed to be able to see a towering figure within this light, one that supported the heavens and earth, its eyes filled with disdain and disdain. Whoosh, the golden soul flew out. In the blink of an eye, it submerged between Wei Zongyuan's eyebrows and vanished. He closed his eyes. His body gently shivered. After several breaths of time, he opened his eyes once more. His pupils had turned a pale gold. Looking down at his hands, Wei Zongyuan fell silent for several breaths of time. Then he gently sighed. "I never thought that there would be a day when I would be resurrected." He looked up, his eyes covering Qinyu. "Lowly mortal, the aura on your body actually causes my heart to race. Although I don't know what it is, after today it will belong to me." Chapter 6:22. Divine spirits were born from the rules, but also stood above them. With a single thought, they could move the world and overturn the clouds and rain. For gates appeared in the skies above the Carp archipelago. Each gate shined with a golden light and emitted a terrifying pressure. With a deep rumble, the 4 gates slowly closed, isolating this part of the world from the outside world. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. His connection with the world's rules had been forcefully interrupted. Wei Zhongyin pointed a finger. "Strip away." His indifferent voice didn't rise or fall at all. The world in front of Qin Yu instantly turned black and white. They separated from each other and spun at an astonishing speed. A powerful pulling strength erupted from the black and white, wanting to pull Qin Yu's consciousness in, crush it, and destroy it. What Wei Zongyuan wanted was the complete Qin Yu, including his soul and mortal body. Thus, annihilating his consciousness was the best choice. Only a divine spirit could accomplish this. To penetrate the mortal body and soul and directly attack the consciousness. This was a method on a completely different level. Chasing after old bastard had finally drawn out a divine spirit. The degree of danger had instantly risen. To use a divine spirit as a whetstone, this was truly bold to the extreme. In truth, if Qin Yu had a choice, he really would have chosen to retreat. Rumble, rumble. The black and white colors spun faster and faster. Like a giant millstone, they emitted a soul-piercing sound. His consciousness trembled and gradually began to scatter. The scene in front of him became blurry and his sense of his body weakened. Qin Yu was well aware that if this continued, once his consciousness collapsed, he would die forever, even if his mortal body and soul still existed. I can't panic. I still have a chance. I need to calm my heart and wait for that flame to appear. If I detonate it, I will definitely be able to break through the power of a divine spirit. Turning back time to the day Qin Yu entered Clear Sun City, he was in the world replicated by the space-time lock and was covered by the curtain of darkness created by the soul prisoners. In the cold darkness, the aura of death became increasingly thick. Qin Yu bitterly persisted. After an unknown period of time, a weak flame suddenly appeared in his soul. Qin Yu's consciousness fused into this weak soul flame. In that moment, he felt as if he were the center of the world, an omnipotent divine spirit sitting high above the highest heavens. Thus, he tore open the curtain of darkness and caused Fan Buyu to suffer backlash and die. Unfortunately, the soul flame only lasted for an extremely short period of time before vanishing. Afterwards, Qin Yu carefully looked through the materials and finally found some information about it. In truth, the so-called flame of the soul had a resounding name in ancient times. It was called the divine flame. When a cultivator stepped onto the road of cultivation, they would cultivate magic, power, mortal body, and soul. In truth, these three aspects should be a progressive process. Mana came first, then the corporeal body, and finally the soul. That was why there was a saying in the world that cultivating techniques was easy, but cultivating the soul was the hardest. When a cultivator's power reached a certain limit, their soul would become stronger and stronger, constantly transforming. Eventually, they would ignite the divine fire and refine their own godhood within the divine fire, thereby becoming a god. It was extremely difficult for the soul to give birth to a divine flame. It was impossible at the Calamity Immortal realm. But ever since Qin Yu had borrowed the strength of the little blue lamp and stepped onto the path of cultivation, he had never relaxed in cultivating his soul. Thus, the strength of his soul was extremely formidable. In addition, an even more important reason was the cosmic sea-cross bell and purple moon in his soul space. They were imperceptibly enhancing the quality of his soul. And not too long ago, when he obtained the ancient Tao inheritance, it caused Qin Yu's soul to undergo a qualitative leap. In fact, the demon mark sealed within his soul even assisted in the birth of a soul fire to a certain degree. Thus, when death approached, Qin Yu persisted and struggled, igniting his own potential and igniting the divine flame ahead of time. But his own soul strength wasn't enough to maintain the divine flame burning. So even if it was ignited, it would be extinguished in the blink of an eye. What Qin Yu was waiting for now was the moment the divine flame ignited. This was because in that moment he would erupt with a strength close to that of a god. But this sort of waiting might not necessarily have a result. The divine flame had appeared once, but there might not be a second time. Even if it did appear, it would only be for a brief moment. If one's consciousness was on the verge of collapse, it would be difficult to grasp that momentary opportunity. Missing it meant death. Wei Zongyuan frowned. This lowly mortal in front of him was actually able to withstand it for so long. This was far beyond his expectations. Moreover, he didn't know why, but he could feel a faint threat. A bit of hesitation flashed in his eyes before it turned into a dense coldness. Wei Zongyuan lifted a hand and thrust out a second finger. Annihilation fluctuations erupted. He gave up the chance to completely obtain this mortal and chose to destroy his soul. In the ancient Tao inheritance, it was unknown whether it was because of secrecy or some other reason, but the ancient had sealed away the cosmic sea-cross bell and purple moon. Even now, their seals still hadn't been opened. Thus, Qin Yu's soul was in a nearly defenseless state. facing the obliteration of a god, he had no strength to resist. But in truth, there was still a will that, even in a deep slumber, instinctively didn't want Qin Yu's soul to be destroyed. Deep blue water light erupted. It was similar to the power of the Tao of water, but it far surpassed the current level of the Tao of water that Qin Yu possessed. This was because this was also the strength of a god, the divine spark fragment that had fused into Qin Yu's soul and could summon the sea map. Wei Zongyuan's eyes brightened. Divine spark! His Tao was different from that of others. He could plunder and swallow the strength of other gods. It was because of this that he was suppressed by the joint forces of others in the past and was trapped under the God Seal Pillar for tens of millions of years. Now that he had escaped, he seemed unparalleled in his divine might, but the truth was that he was incomparably weak. If he could swallow this formidable divine spark, he could rapidly restore his strength and truly occupy this mortal body. He wouldn't need to worry about a backlash from its original consciousness. Bang! Wei Zongyuan's pale golden eyes suddenly turned blood red. He glared at Qin Yu, or to be more precise, at the divine spark fragment that had fused into his soul. He opened his mouth and emitted a sharp howl. The sound vibrated at an astonishing frequency, instantly shattering the world's rules and causing them to reform and regenerate. Thus, a blood-red and withered arm stretched out from nothingness, grasping at the point between Qin Yu's eyebrows. The divine spark fragment seemed to feel an incomparably intense threat. The sound of crashing waves rose up between the heavens and earth. Then, the phantom of a boundless sea wrapped around Qin Yu. The blood-red and withered arm fell onto the sea phantom. It violently trembled for several breaths of time before it squeezed in with difficulty. The divine spark's taste was wonderful. Its 5 fingers shivered in excitement as it slowly but surely moved forward. Shua, the figure of a woman, appeared in the sea. As she looked at the approaching blood-red arm, she began to speak in rhythmic syllables. It was ancient, boundless, and exuded a transcendent dignity, as if she were the ruler of the world, controlling all life in this world. Within the sea phantom, sea beasts appeared one after another. Even though they were only phantoms, they still released a heaven-shaking aura. But as these sea beasts approached the blood-red arm, their bodies were like punctured balloons. They cried out in pain and rapidly shrank before bursting apart. This arm itself wasn't too strong, but it seemed to possess some unimaginable destructive attribute to the power of a spiritual god. It could easily destroy them. The woman in the sea phantom frowned, revealing a thoughtful expression. After several breaths of time, she gently sighed. The mortal she was residing in had grown at a speed that far surpassed her imagination. She really didn't want to help him, but now, if she didn't help him, she would vanish into thin air. The woman turned around and spat out a blue light. It was so pure and transparent that it left one lost in it. The blue light was like a waterfall. It flew between Qin Yu's eyebrows, entering his soul space and fusing into his soul. The birth of the divine flame was established upon a powerful foundation of the soul. This blue light was the same as providing Qin Yu with the spark to ignite the divine flame. Bang! That golden flame that Qin Yu had been waiting for was like a spark falling into a barrel of oil, instantly erupting. He opened his eyes. Golden light burst out, submerging into the void in front of him. He raised a fist and smashed it forwards. Bang! The sea phantom collapsed, vanishing as it tumbled about. The fist collided with the blood-red arm, causing it to emit pained and unwilling screams. Kacha! Kacha! The arm broke into pieces, turning to powder. Wei Zongyan drew back several steps, golden divine blood flowing out from the corners of his lips. He frowned, his eyes cold. He lifted his hands, and the rules of the world wildly revolved. A giant python appeared out of thin air, opening its jaws and biting towards him. The irregularly broken divine spark constantly spun, releasing motes of blue light that were absorbed by Qin Yu's soul, allowing the divine flame to continue burning. During this process, Qin Yu's soul was like an iron ingot placed into a furnace. The impurities were burned to ashes, and the quality of his soul rose at an astonishing speed. In the distant past, there were divine beings that trained their disciples. They would consume their source divine spark in order to help their disciples ignite the divine flame ahead of time. Although this method couldn't directly create a divinity, it could still cause a leap in the quality of the disciple's soul, further consolidating the foundation for igniting the divine flame. Of course, the disciples mentioned here were those chosen by the divine beings. They were absolute direct descendants that would inherit the teachings of the divine beings. Now, Qin Yu was the same as enjoying a chance to be trained by the divine beings at all costs. Even though she wasn't willing at all, the divine flame burned. In this state, Qin Yu possessed strength comparable to that of a divine being, but he was also immortal. The fusion of divine and mortal allowed him to easily destroy the blood-red arm. Otherwise, even if another divine being were to come today, they would likely end up being swallowed up by him. With a punch, the world trembled. The head of the giant python that bit at him exploded. But it seemed as if it hadn't received any substantial damage. Its massive body wrapped around the space where Qin Yu was and began to wildly contract. A battle between divine beings could be seen as a competition between the two sides on the level of rules. In this aspect, Qin Yu was undoubtedly at a disadvantage. But the combination of divine and mortal could restrain Wei Zongyuan's strength. Both sides had their own advantages, thus they were evenly matched. The python's body was constantly broken and then instantly repaired itself. It wanted to crush apart the protection of the rules around Qin Yu, but it was always a little short. Qin Yu was willing to wait. After all, as the divine flame burned, his soul was constantly strengthening. Wei Zongyuan seemed fine for a while, but besides them, there was one person who couldn't endure it any longer. An icy cold female voice sounded out in Qin Yu's soul space. I don't know if you are pretending to be confused or if you are deliberately delaying for time, but I can clearly tell you that if this continues, this part of my divine spark will collapse. You should be well aware of what the consequences will be. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Perhaps these words were exaggerated, but he couldn't take this risk. He lifted a hand and pointed out, "Rumble, rumble." In that instant, the winds and clouds changed color. A giant finger appeared in the wind and clouds, falling towards Wei Zongyuan. After the first finger fell, Qin Yu pointed out a second time without pause. With this finger, the sky suddenly darkened and the temperature crazily fell. A cold Yin aura seeped into the marrow. Phantom after phantom, human or beast, appeared in the dark skies. In the blink of an eye, the world seemed to turn into another world of ghosts. The second finger was followed by the third. When this finger pointed out, heaven and earth immediately lost color. Endless scrolls appeared, displaying scenes of the great changes of time. Countless creatures were born and died. 3 fingers of the blue point, blue expanse, blue spirit, blue sea. But at this time, Qin Yu, who was in a state of burning divine flame, paused for a moment before lifting his hand once more. His movements were extremely slow. Starting from the tip of his finger, it rapidly became transparent, like some sort of crystal that seemed to fuse with the world. The 4th finger of the blue point, blue heaven. The meaning was, "A finger asks the blue heaven, who dares to contend with me?" The name and meaning appeared in Qin Yu's mind as he pointed out his 4th finger. It was like a mark left behind by a branding iron that could no longer be erased. At this moment, Qin Yu even had a faint intuition that the 4th finger wasn't the end. There should be an even more terrifying power to come. But it was clear that this wasn't a level that Qin Yu could reach right now. Thus, he only remembered it in his heart before suppressing this thought. Wei Zongyuan's complexion changed. He flicked his sleeves, and a golden wheel appeared behind him, releasing 1 trillion beams of golden light. In the next moment, The 4 fingers of the blue point were like 4 arrows that crossed through space and time, smashing into the golden wheel. Rumble, rumble. There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Space instantly shattered, turning into chaos. Every time it tumbled, endless destruction would be released, swallowing up Wei Zongyuan. After several breaths of time, the burning golden divine flame on Qin Yu's soul suddenly faded away. He instantly fell from the feeling that he was the center of the world. His heart was filled with disappointment and emptiness, but in the next moment he couldn't help but smile. The divine spark had taken back its strength. This meant that today's battle had come to an end. Roar! With a roar of despair, the python that was crazily tightening its body suddenly exploded into pieces. Wei Zongyuan walked out from the chaos. His expression was calm. He swept his eyes around, a deep reluctance in them. Your Majesty, you have won in the end. I really am a person that deserves to die. I was willing to give up my will, but I still couldn't survive. Then I will die here. I only hope that your Majesty can keep our promise and set up a stone tablet for me. Qin Yu nodded. Since I promised you, I will naturally accomplish it. Wei Zongyuan bowed. Thank you, your Majesty. In the next moment, his body was annihilated, turning into powder that was blown away by the wind. A golden flame remained where it was. It was like a candle in the autumn wind, flickering as if it would be extinguished at any moment. This was the final remnant soul of that divine spirit. Keep it. Don't let it scatter. Purple Moon's weak voice sounded out in his mind. Qin Yu's soul ignited the divine flame. As he burned and tempered himself, he also helped her undo the seal. Although he didn't know what Purple Moon's goal was, he still trusted her. After a moment of hesitation, he lifted a hand and grasped it. Shwa! A layer of dark purple moonlight flashed, and the golden flames vanished from sight. After carefully sensing that there was nothing wrong, Qin Yu took a deep breath and smiled. When he killed Wei Zongyuan and encountered a divine spirit, although it was dangerous, the harvests were enormous. His soul had been tempered by the divine flame. In that state where he was the master of the world, his will had been sublimated. Not only that, but he had also inadvertently forced out the sea god's divine spark that had already awakened but remained hidden. Indeed, the risks one took were directly proportional to the harvests. Qin Yu lifted a hand and grasped forwards. The shattered islands and mountain peaks rapidly reformed. A great tomb appeared and a stone tablet broke through the earth. Qin Yu landed in front of the great tomb and cupped his hands together. The powder on the surface of the stone tablet constantly fell off, and the words Great Wei, Imperial Wei Zongyuan rapidly appeared. Since he had agreed to something, he naturally had to do it. Moreover, with Wei Zongyuan's cultivation, no matter what sort of person he was, he deserved the respect he deserved. The second kill had been completed. Qin Yu turned to leave, but he stopped in the next moment. He flew above the Carp Islands, and his deep and low voice echoed through the world. Starting today, the sacrificial ceremony will end forever. You can all rid yourself of this curse. Countless pale and panic-stricken natives heard this. They were stunned for a moment before they knelt down and kowtowed towards Qin Yu's back. It wasn't that the natives of the Carp Islands had never doubted whether or not the so-called demonic god really existed, but they didn't dare to, nor did they have the means to investigate. They could only sacrifice themselves, generation after generation, in order to exchange for the continuation of their families and tribes. Qin Yu flew out from the islands. With a thought, a ball of water rose up. Yu Qi's face lit up with joy, and she immediately threw herself at him. The 7 great empires of the land of divinity and demons occupied the entire world. But this didn't mean that every place was ruled. For instance, at the border of the Qin, Wei, and Han empires, there was a place called Flowing Abyss. The 3 empires had once tried to incorporate it into their territory, but ultimately gave up because of various accidents. Gradually, Flowing Abyss became a lawless zone. But as time passed, it gradually formed its own system. All sorts of vicious and evil cultivators or desperate cultivators fled from the three empires into Flowing Abyss. Thus, the living environment here became incomparably harsh. Of course, there were exceptions. Flowing Abyss had 3 great cities. They were called Seeking Cauldron, Pursuing the Tao, and Seeking Existence. Behind these 3 great cities, there were extremely powerful influences that used bloody methods to maintain order. If anyone dared to cause trouble in these cities, they would be hunted down and their fates would be miserable. But this sort of order only existed within the city walls. Once one stepped out of the city gates, even if blood splashed in front of them, the guards wouldn't bat an eye. On this day, a man and a woman walked in from outside Seeking Cauldron City. Their clothes were clean and tidy, and their steps were neither fast nor slow. Many eyes locked onto their figures in the dark, but no one dared to do anything. The reason was simple. These 2 people were far too calm. This sort of calm demeanor absolutely couldn't be faked. Chapter 6:23. Just as the man and woman were about to enter the city, there was a loud rumble of horse hooves behind them. Large black-scaled horses carried riders on their backs as they raced forwards. They were as fast as lightning, stirring up dust in their wake. Their momentum was monstrous. Those that were secretly itching to try immediately calmed down. They restrained their auras, not daring to leak any of it out. But soon, their eyes widened as if they had seen a ghost. The young man and woman on the road didn't seem to have any intention of dodging. They maintained their original rhythm as they moved towards the city gates. The sound of hooves behind them was like a thunderclap, carrying with it a wild aura that could tear apart one's heart and lungs. It covered the skies as if it would crush all obstacles in its path. The guards at the city gates had dignified expressions. Some of them couldn't help but curse out loud. "Hurry up and fuck off! Do you want to die?" "Pa!" The sound of footsteps was light, but it was clearly heard by everyone. A man and a woman had already stepped into the city gates. The complexions of the guards changed. Looking at the roaring black flood, their leader clenched his teeth and roared, "Stop them!" As long as one entered the range of the city, they would receive the protection of Ask Tripod City. This was a bottom line that couldn't be changed, and it was also the foundation of the city's existence. As the 2 sides were about to collide, there was a loud whistle from the black flood. The riders pulled on their reins, and the black-scaled horses stood up, forcefully stopping outside the city gates. The leader of the guards let out a long breath. He hurriedly bowed and stood up, his complexion icy cold. He looked at the young man and woman at the city gates and clenched his teeth. "Leave this place immediately!" The eyes of the other side beneath the black robes caused his heart to tremble. He swallowed back the curses he was about to say. It was only when the man and woman vanished from his line of sight that the leader discovered that the clothes beneath his armor were soaked with sweat. The black flood passed through the city gates, heading straight for the central region of Ask Tripod City. There was a black speed car in the group that occasionally flashed with lightning. "Young master, subordinate has already ordered people to follow them. Once they leave the city, they will be captured and dealt with by you," a rider said in a low voice. After a short period of silence, a light voice echoed out from the speed car. "Do it secretly. With his status, this matter couldn't be known by others. Young master, rest assured that subordinate will arrange everything," the rider said confidently. The entire prying Cauldron City was filled with their spies. As long as they could lock onto their whereabouts, the 2 of them wouldn't be able to escape. However, the knight quickly took out the communication jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. Immediately, his expression became extremely ugly. He gritted his teeth, turned around, and saluted. "Young master, we lost those 2 people, but please rest assured, I will definitely find them." In the black flying car, the young man who was reading a book frowned when he heard this. Then he regained his calm and gave a soft grunt of acknowledgement. There were countless extraordinary people in the world, and it was nothing to be able to escape surveillance. But this time, why had his father called him back in such a hurry? The flood stopped outside the city lord mansion. The black flying car opened, and a young man in a light blue robe walked out with his head lowered. "Greetings, young master." "Walala!" Everyone was kneeling on the ground outside the mansion. The blue-robed young man nodded. Just as he was about to step into the mansion, he seemed to sense something and turned around. The silhouettes of a man and a woman stood in the middle of the kneeling crowd, and they were particularly eye-catching. It was them. The young man's pupils shrank. He stepped forwards and cupped his hands together. "I am Wu Yin. Greetings, fellow Taoists. I wonder if there is anything I can help you with?" From beneath the black robe, a light voice sounded out. "The two of us have come to pay our respects to the city lord." Wu Yin said, "Do you two have an appointment?" The black-robed man said no. Wu Yin frowned. "My father is usually extremely busy. If you don't have an appointment, I fear it will be difficult for him to find the time. If you two aren't in a hurry, please follow me into the mansion first. I will help you make arrangements as soon as possible." The black-robed man nodded. All right. Although his attitude was a bit disrespectful, the smile on Wu Yin's face became even brighter. He bowed and said, "Please." The black-robed man pulled on the woman beside him. His steps were calm and steady as he walked up the stairs and into the main entrance. As soon as they entered, they could feel that something was different. Their bodies seemed to sink into mud, and every step they took was particularly difficult. Dong dong! A deep and low bell rang out from deep within the mansion. As Wu Yin entered, his complexion changed. This sound should have come from his father's courtyard, from the great drum that couldn't be struck. This was also the first time he had heard it make a sound. Was there some problem? As he was thinking, Wu Yin's eyes widened. Space twisted in front of him, and a middle-aged cultivator stepped out. His temples were white, and he was handsome. At this time, there was a smile on his face. "Honored guests have come from afar, and I have failed to welcome you. I ask that you don't take offense." A voice sounded out from beneath the black robe. "City Lord, there is no need to be so polite. Your young master has already received us outside the city gates." The middle-aged cultivator revealed a look of surprise. "Wu Yin, hurry up and greet our honored guests." It was only then that Wu Yin regained his composure. He hurriedly cupped his hands together and said, "I greet two honored guests. If I offended you before, I ask that you forgive me." For his father to personally come out to greet him, and with such a respectful attitude, one didn't need to be a genius to know that this person was absolutely extraordinary. In particular, the black-robed man's words clearly hinted at him. How could he dare to pretend to be ignorant? The middle-aged cultivator harshly said, "Wu Yin, what did you do?" The black-robed man lightly said, "City Lord, there is no need to be like this. The two of us will not pursue matters of the past. Consider this as repaying the city Lord's previous favor." The middle-aged cultivator cupped his hands together. "I thank honored guests for being so magnanimous." After a brief pause, he said, "Honored guests have come from afar. Please enter the hall and allow me to entertain you." Wu Yin lowered his head. His complexion was pale, and beads of sweat covered his forehead. He could certainly hear the confrontation between the two sides. It was clear that the two people who came today were deliberately using him to repay his father's favor. If his father directly acknowledged them, that meant that they had the qualifications to directly move against him. To put it more bluntly, he had unknowingly taken a trip to the gates of hell just now. After entering the hall and waiting for a maid to serve refreshments, the middle-aged cultivator waved his hand for everyone to leave. He stood up and solemnly bowed. "Wu Donglu greets, Your Majesty, the demon sovereign." He pulled down his black robe, revealing a head of white hair. He had a calm expression and lightly said, Hunter Lord, there is no need to be so polite. With your status, it is fine to treat me as an equal. Wu Donglu smiled. If that's the case, then I won't be polite. He cupped his hands together. Ever since Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign ascended to the throne, Hunter God has yet to offer her congratulations. So I took the initiative to provide information on Old Bastard. If Your Majesty is dissatisfied with this, I ask for your forgiveness. Qin Yu shook his head. What happened in the past is settled between you and me. I only hope that Hunter God will not try to spy on my whereabouts in the future. Otherwise there will be misunderstandings. Wu Donglio's smile was brilliant. If Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign speaks, then Hunter God will obey. In the future, we will absolutely not involve ourselves in anything related to Your Majesty. Qin Yu said, Thank you, Hunter Lord. In terms of information channels, Hunter God might be the #1 in the world, but the influence of the demonic path couldn't be underestimated. With the status of the Demon Sovereign, it wouldn't be difficult for him to temporarily block off Hunter God's information channels. As for this brat Wu Yin, Qin Yu had indeed done this intentionally. Removing the favor was only on the surface, but it was more to warn Hunter God not to try to influence him. Wu Donglu sat down. The Demon Sovereign has come to Flowing Abyss. What orders do you have? Qin Yu said. Does Hunter Lord not know why I have come? The two looked at each other. After several breaths of time, Wu Donglu laughed. I naturally know. Demon Sovereign, please wait a moment. He lifted a hand and tapped it. Layers of ripples spread out, covering the entire hall. In the next moment, he flipped his hand and took out a jade slip. Its surface shimmered with light. What the Demon Sovereign wants is in this jade slip. Take a look and you will understand. Qin Yu lifted a hand and took the jade slip. The jade slip dissipated, turning into blue energy that fused into his body. At the same time, information rapidly appeared in his mind. Qin Yu closed his eyes. After several breaths of time, a sharp light flashed in them. This result he never thought it would happen. Wu Donglu cupped his hands together. Demon Sovereign, there is no need to worry. What happened before was my lack of consideration. Consider this an apology. Qin Yu said in a low voice, Is Hunter Lord willing to do so? Wu Donglu shook his head. I will say something disrespectful, but if the one who came today wasn't the Demon Sovereign, then perhaps I would have personally made him stay. But because of your status, I am doomed to have no choice but to bow my head. Since that's the case, there is no need to be so conflicted. To use the death of one person to exchange for the stability of the Hunter God organization, I believe that even if the hunchback knows, he should be able to understand. The information in the sphere was what Qin Yu was looking for. It was the third person of the 4 old ghosts, the hunchback, and he was actually a member of the Hunter God organization and held a high position. But at this time he had been sold out by Wu Donglu. Qin Yu looked at Wu Donglu, who was calm and collected. He labeled him as a real villain in his heart. However, from the perspective of the entire God Hunter organization, his decision was undoubtedly the best choice. If that's the case, then I won't be polite with Hunter Lord's favor. Wu Donglu smiled. To be able to do a favor for Your Majesty the Demon Sovereign is my honor, but Qin Yu said, I understand. I won't make things difficult for Hunter Lord. As for killing people, I will do it myself. Wu Donglu stood up. 3 days from now, outside Yunchuan Valley. Qin Yu nodded. With a flick of his sleeves, the fluctuations that covered the hall dispersed. He reached out a hand to grab Yu Qi and disappeared from sight. The smile on Wu Donglio's face faded. He indifferently sat down, a chill lingering in his eyes. Hunter Lord, the matter of the Demon Sovereign being injured has already been confirmed. This is the best chance for us to complete the contract. So why don't you do anything? A face wriggled on the surface of a stone pillar in the hall. Although it was blurry, one could still feel its dissatisfaction. Wu Donglu sneered. Do you think I don't want to do anything? The aura on his body is terrifying. Even if you and I work together, we still might not succeed. The blurry face frowned. I don't believe you. What aura can make you feel such dread? Divine flame. Wu Donglu roared out loud. The face on the stone pillar immediately quieted down. Its eyes widened with shock. Wu Donglu would never lie about this sort of matter. But looking at the entire land of divinity and demons, there had never been a true great Tao realm existence. So how could someone possibly light their divine flame? Wu Donglu sucked in a deep breath. Don't ask me. I have no idea what happened either. It was no wonder that Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, those two old fellows, had successively died at the hands of the severely wounded demon sovereign. He had actually lit his divine flame before, even if he could only maintain it for a short period of time. In that 1 or 2 breaths of time, the strength he possessed was enough to sweep away the world. Betraying the hunchback was his final move. The most important reason why he didn't hesitate to throw it out was the aura of the divine flame on Qin Yu's body. The other reason was that Wu Donglu wanted to clearly investigate just how Qin Yu had lit his divine flame ahead of time. 3 days from now, the battle at Yunchuan Valley would be the best chance. Outside Ascension City, Qin Yu and Yu Qi quietly walked forwards. Countless eyes were filled with awe and fear. As a group that lived in the shadows, killing and plundering for a living, they had their own channels of information. Although they didn't know just what happened in the City Lord Mansion. Just the fact that Wu Yun personally appeared and invited the two of them into the City Lord Mansion was enough to shock everyone. Yu Qi hesitated for a moment. She said in a soft voice, Your Majesty, I always feel that beneath this Hunter Lord smile, there is some ill intent hidden within. Qin Yu smiled. Your feeling wasn't wrong. In the main hall just now, besides you, me, and Wu Donglu, there should have been another person. He narrowed his eyes and continued to say, that person's aura was extremely formidable and filled with hostility. He had been vaguely locking onto us. Yu Qi's eyes widened. She never imagined that such a great danger would be hidden in that peaceful meeting just now. Qin Yu reached out and patted her back. There's no need to worry. I still have a trace of the divine flame's aura that hasn't dissipated yet. Although it isn't powerful, it isn't a problem to scare people. Yu Qi bit her lips. But 3 days from now, Qin Yu said, don't worry, I won't give them a chance to kick me while I'm down. He suddenly turned. Fellow Taoist Westgate, do you think I'm right? Space quietly collapsed. Solitary Westgate stepped out, a helpless look on his face. Qin Yu, if you continue like this, sooner or later you will bury your life. The strange 3-legged bird, perched on his shoulder, nodded again and again. Brat, it isn't easy for a person to live. You must cherish your life. In these past days, it had witnessed with its own eyes how desperately Qin Yu had risked his life. Not only had he killed Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, but he had also resisted the backlash of the demon mark in an exhausted and weak state. Many times he had nearly died. This bird lord had seen many people risk their lives in his life, but he was the first to treat this as a normal occurrence. Yu Qi revealed a happy expression. Senior Westgate. With solitary Westgate here, even if there was an accident, there was still room to salvage the situation. She secretly pinched Qin Yu. Since he knew that solitary Westgate was here, why didn't he tell her earlier? He had left her worried all this time. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. When he killed Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, solitary Westgate hadn't arrived yet. But he didn't have any intention of explaining, letting Yu Qi think this was also good. Late at night, a bonfire burned in the wilderness, emitting light, crackling sounds. Yu Qi leaned against Qin Yu. Her eyes closed as she slept soundly. Qin Yu glanced at her face and turned his head. I must thank fellow Taoist Westgate. After you came, she clearly felt much more at ease. In these past days, she slept the best tonight. Solitary Westgate waved his hand. Don't push the blame onto me. The reason this girl slept so well was because she was leaning against you. After a pause, he flicked his finger, and a barrier fell over Yu Qi, making it easier for the two to speak. That's enough. Tell me, how are you right now? Qin Yu said, the demon mark is truly terrifying. It is fused together with my soul, and it is impossible to separate it. Either I fuse with it, or I am swallowed by it. Solitary Westgate had a complex expression. I don't know whether I should praise you for your courage or mock you for being ignorant and fearless. Something like the demon mark is not something that even someone on my level would easily touch. Yet you actually dared to use it to suppress the Netherworld Lotus. Qin Yu shook his head. I had no other choice. I could only do this. He looked up. Fellow Taoist Westgate, I have always been under your care. I really shouldn't have made any more requests. But right now, the only one I can trust is you. The demon envoy's original actions had left Qin Yu disappointed. He no longer dared to entrust her to him. If I encounter any misfortune, I ask that you protect Yu Qi so that she can continue living in peace. I owe her far too much in this life, and I cannot continue dragging her down. Solitary Westgate frowned. Qin Yu, I can agree, but you should know that my help to you has always been with a purpose. So, if you want to protect her, your best choice is to survive this calamity and continue living. I have a premonition that as long as you can overcome this crisis, your future will be smooth sailing. No one will be able to stop your rise. Qin Yu smiled. I will do my best. 3 days quickly passed. Yunchuan Valley. Hunchback Old Man's figure appeared. He looked at the empty valley entrance and frowned. At this time, for some unknown reason, he felt an intense threat from the depths of his heart. It was as if this valley was a mouth that wanted to devour him. As he thought of this inexplicable arrangement, his heart skipped a beat. There was a problem. The hunchback old man turned around and left. He didn't hesitate in the slightest. However, as soon as he moved, the space behind him shattered and a fist punched out. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Hunchback old man was sent flying backwards. As he saw who it was that sneak attacked him, his complexion changed. Demon Sovereign. Qin Yu raised his hand, and the space-time lock fused into the world. In the next moment, the two of them vanished from sight. Drifting Abyss was the headquarters of the Hunter God organization, so he had to be extra cautious. This place met the conditions to activate the space-time lock, so Qin Yu couldn't just leave it there. At the Carp Islands, because of the existence of the divine spirit skeleton and the divine seal pillar, the space-time lock couldn't be replicated. Thus he didn't use it. Cauldron Quest City. Wu Donglu fiercely stood up. He clenched his teeth and roared, Holy Emperor Palace, space-time lock! In front of him, there was no one on the swirling picture scroll. His eyes flashed. He lifted a foot and stepped down, his figure piercing through space. The divine flame was an extremely important matter. No matter what, he had to investigate it. But before Wu Donglu could smoothly arrive at Drifting Abyss, a feeling of danger swelled up in his heart. His complexion changed, and he thrust out a hand. Rumble, rumble, space shattered. Wu Donglu staggered backwards, each step causing space to collapse inward, forming a bottomless black hole. Dao Arena Master! He cried out in alarm. Solitary Westgate stepped out from the shattered space, his eyes deep. Lord Hunter, you have hidden your abilities well. It was only today that I learned that you aren't too far away from the realm of transcendence. I believe that in at most 1,000 years, another giant will appear in this world, one that has broken through life and death. Wu Donglu took a deep breath. He cupped his hands together. I didn't know the arena master was here. I have been disrespectful. Solitary Westgate bluntly said, I have an agreement with the demon sovereign to not allow others to disturb him. I ask for Lord Hunter's forgiveness for his battle with hunchback old man. Wu Donglu's face stiffened. So that's how it is. I was worried that if something happened to the demon sovereign here, it would draw the retaliation of the demonic path. Since Arena Master Westgate is here, it seems I was worrying too much. I bid my farewells. He turned and teleported away, vanishing from sight. Solitary Westgate revealed a look of praise, not to mention his cultivation. Just his shamelessness and decisiveness alone made this leader of the God Hunter organization a top-level character. If things didn't work, he would immediately give up and cleanly strip himself of all responsibility. He turned to look at Yun Chuanggu. With his cultivation, he could faintly sense the world reproduced by the space-time lock. Qin Yu and Hunchback Old Man's battle had entered a white-hot stage. But looking at it right now, Qin Yu's chances of victory were high. The strange, three-legged bird flew over. Its body had expanded dozens of times over. Yu Qi sat on its back and hurriedly asked Senior Westgate, "Do you know what Qin Yu's current situation is?" Solitary Westgate smiled. He lifted a hand and pointed forward. "Why ask me? You can see for yourself." An overlapping world appeared. Qin Yu stepped out from it. Although his face was pale, his eyes were as bright as ever. He met Yu Qi's gaze and warmly said, "I'm fine." He turned and flicked his sleeves. A nameless tomb appeared on the ground. As he looked at the blank tombstone, there was no joy on his face. After continuously killing Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, perhaps he had already adapted to this sort of intense slaughter. Although he had experienced a great battle, Qin Yu's will hadn't been tempered too clearly. In truth, Qin Yu was a bit disappointed in Hunchback Old Man's strength. Solitary Westgate lightly said, "There's still one more. Trust me, Woodchopper Fu will not disappoint you, but the premise is that you can find him." Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Someone just made a mistake, so he should be willing to sell me some face. He should be able to tell me the information I want. This fellow Wu Donglu, did he really think that he didn't need to be responsible just because he left so quickly? What a joke! Solitary Westgate shook his head. "Right now, you should worry about yourself and how you will survive." The demon mark began to restlessly stir. The aura it emitted couldn't escape his senses. Qin Yu's complexion paled even further. "Next, I will have to trouble fellow Taoist Westgate to continue protecting me." The group flew away from Yun Chuanggu. Just as they found a place to rest, Qin Yu sat down, and the backlash of the demon mark erupted. It was like a violent storm on the sea, accompanied by heaven-shaking waves. His consciousness was like a ferry that could capsize at any moment. An entire night passed. When the skies brightened, Qin Yu's tense body finally relaxed. He gasped for breath and opened his eyes. His tired gaze fell on Yu Qi, and then he nodded to her before falling asleep. After every great battle, the demon mark would seize the chance to cause a backlash, each time more intense than the last. If it weren't for the tempering of his will from killing Fan Buyu and Wei Zongyuan, Qin Yu might not have been able to withstand it. 5 days later, Cauldron Quest City. Qin Yu visited the city, Lord Mansion alone. Wu Donglu seemed to have already expected this. He cupped his hands together and apologized. "The demon sovereign is in flowing abyss. If anything were to happen to him, the entire hunting god would not be able to escape responsibility. In my anxiety, I acted rashly. I hope that the demon sovereign does not take offense." His tone was sincere, and his face was full of remorse. Besides having thick skin, this Lord Hunter's acting skills were also top class. Qin Yu lightly said, "As long as Lord Hunter can tell me some information, I will believe you." These words couldn't be more direct. Wu Donglio's expression nearly collapsed. He coughed and said, "If the demon sovereign needs anything, please feel free to speak." Qin Yu said, "Woodchopper Fu." Wu Donglu shook his head. "I do not." Afraid that Qin Yu wouldn't believe him, he lifted a hand and pointed forward. Stars appeared in space, forming a vast starry sky. This was the legendary most powerful treasure of the hunting god organization, the illusory sea star chart. Each of the stars corresponded to an identity, and the God Hunter organization had detailed records about him or her. The brighter the star, the higher the status, the higher the strength, and the more detailed the information. Wu Donglu took out a bright star. I ask that your majesty, the demon sovereign, carefully examine it. Do not damage the treasure. Qin Yu received it and probed it with his divine sense. He was able to see all information regarding Woodchopper Fu. From when he was young and mediocre to when he rose, there were detailed records of him. But in the last 30 million years, the information regarding Woodchopper Fu had become extremely fragmented. Outside Four Seasons City and G City, he had attacked Qin Yu twice. These were the last news he left in this world. Qin Yu put down the star and frowned. Wu Donglu shouldn't be lying. If even the hunting god couldn't find a trace of Woodchopper Fu, wanting to chase down this old fellow was harder than ascending to the heavens. His eyes darkened for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and suppressed his thoughts. He said in a low voice, I want to look at another person's information. Wu Donglu asked, who? Immortal sect, Xin Yuanin. Wu Donglio's complexion changed. No. Although the hunting god has collected information on supreme beings of this world, they have never made it public. Otherwise, they would be committing a great taboo. Qin Yu was expressionless. I didn't hear you clearly. I asked the hunting god to say it again. Between his fingers, the star that recorded Woodchopper Fu constantly spun. No one knew whether or not it would explode in the next moment. Wu Donglu was silent, his complexion incomparably ugly. He never imagined that the dignified demon sovereign would do something so disgraceful. He took a deep breath and clenched his teeth. Demon sovereign, you must guarantee that no one else will ever learn of today's events. Qin Yu nodded. I also don't want to provoke trouble. Wu Donglu formed a law formula with his hands. A dark region of the illusory sea star chart suddenly erupted with a brilliant light. This was an extremely bright star that appeared. The moment it appeared, all the other stars in the area lost their luster. Wu Donglu carefully took out the star and said, Demon Sovereign, this is the first time and also the last time. I hope that you can keep your promise. Otherwise, the hunting god will become your enemy. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves and took the star. He probed it with his divine sense. There was very little information on Xin Yuanin. The current master of 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace had suddenly appeared not long after he had escaped from the immortal sect. At this point, Qin Yu could confirm that Xin Yuanin was Ning Ling, and the last thing recorded in the star was 9 Heaven Mirror Moon Palace has been sealed off, frozen for 30 million miles. It is suspected that Shan Yuanin has suffered a backlash from cultivating the sublime lost emotion code. The cause of the backlash is unknown, but it is speculated that it is related to the demonic path's holy sovereign Qin Yu. The specific circumstances are currently being investigated. Qin Yu's body tensed. It took him several breaths of time to compose himself. He tossed the 2 stars to Wu Donglu and stood up. I bid my farewells. With a single step, he vanished. Wu Donglu held the star that recorded Shen Yuanin's information, his complexion uncertain. Although he thought this was inconceivable, he hesitated for a long time and then added another line. It is inferred that Shen Yuanin and Ningling are the same person. The immortal sect is ordered to investigate. Chapter 6:24. Drifting Abyss also had a Tao Arena branch. According to Solitary Westgate, as long as it was a place where masters gathered, he would place a piece there. Whether or not he made money was another matter, but at the very least he would have eyes and ears. This branch was located in Survival Seeking City. Solitary Westgate brought Qin Yu and Yu Qi here to temporarily rest. No matter which branch it was, the top training rooms were all beautifully built. Qin Yu leaned against a soft couch beneath a pavilion. He drank a mouthful of wine and let out a comfortable breath. I suddenly feel that your goal in building these Tao arenas, Westgate, is so that you can have a comfortable foothold no matter where you go. Across from him, solitary Westgate's smile froze for a moment before he fell silent. Qin Yu sat up straight. Am I wrong? Solitary Westgate bitterly smiled. No, you should be the first person to guess the truth. He stood up and faced the beautiful garden. The truth is that when I built the Tao Arena system, my original goal was to make myself and my family happier. Qin Yu had a dignified expression. If my words have caused you to recall some bad memories, then I must express my apologies. Solitary Westgate shook his head. It's fine. He was silent for several breaths of time. There are some things that I should tell you. He turned. Do you mind going somewhere with me? Don't worry, the Tao Arena is safe. As long as the lunar bird stays here, there won't be any problems with you, Qin Yu nodded. All right. Solitary Westgate flipped his sleeves. Space collapsed inwards, forming a bottomless black hole. The two of them stepped into it. Brilliant colors flashed in front of them at an astonishing speed. Qin, you could feel that this wasn't a temporary channel, but a special channel that had been arranged long ago. Solitary Westgate explained to him, in all the Tao arenas of the world, there is a hidden channel like this. It can allow me to return home in the shortest time possible. As for why, you will find out in a moment. Qin, you could feel the heaviness coming from Solitary Westgate's body. He didn't say anything. Soon, they reached the end of the colorful channel. The two passed through the exit and appeared above the endless sea. A low mountain peak floated in the skies above the sea. Fog curled around it, obscuring one's line of sight. Solitary Westgate revealed a gentle expression. Qin Yu, you are the first person to step into my home in the land of divinity and demons. In a moment, no matter what you see, please do not reveal it. He took a step forward, and the clouds parted automatically, revealing an ordinary house on the mountainside. Father! Amidst the surprised cheers, the boy ran and threw himself into his arms. Solitary Westgate hugged him and rubbed his head. His smile was unprecedentedly gentle. Hasn't Ning been good lately? The boy nodded again and again. Of course. Mother has praised me many times. As he saw Qin Yu behind him, he timidly hid behind Solitary Westgate. Don't be afraid. This is your Uncle Qin Yu, my good friend. Qin Yu suppressed the shock in his heart and bowed slightly. Hello, and ran. I often hear your father mention you. You really are an obedient child. And Ning poked his head out and smiled embarrassedly, but his eyes revealed intimacy. The middle-aged woman came out to greet them. She earnestly bowed to Qin Yu and pulled Ning away. Listen to me and follow me to prepare some food. Don't disturb your father and uncle. As Qin Yu watched the mother and son leave, he turned to look at Solitary Westgate. His expression became dignified. With his cultivation and boundary, he could naturally see that this mother and son pair that seemed no different from ordinary people were in truth two masses of souls that had already died. It was just that a formidable strength of rules had molded their bodies and forcefully preserved their souls that should have dissipated a long time ago. Now you know everything. Solitary Westgate said in a low voice, I once said that there would be a matter in the future that I would need your help with, and that matter is to help me resurrect my dead wife and son. Qin Yu frowned. Westgate, I can help you, but the great terror of life and death is something that even calamity immortals find difficult to transcend. Moreover, what you need to do is bring them back from the dead. This matter has never been recorded in the demonic path. Are you sure you can do it? Solitary Westgate lightly said, In the past, after Yun Yang and Ning died, I crazily searched for a way to save them. Thus, I divided up this world and reversed the rules here so that their souls could continue on. At the time, I also thought that they would never be able to come back to life. That was until I discovered a great secret of this world. I cannot say it now, not because I don't want to tell you, but because if I mention it, there is a chance that it will stir up the aura and cause unpredictable consequences. But I am certain that as long as you help me with all your strength, they will have a chance to come back to life. And for this, I will give you sufficient repayment. Qin Yu's eyebrows relaxed. Even if there is no repayment, the help you gave me in the past is already enough. Solitary Westgate's lips moved. Thank you. Qin Yu smiled. I suddenly feel a great pressure. It seems that my life no longer simply belongs to me. Solitary Westgate said, so you must live on. You absolutely cannot die, because you are my only hope to resurrect my wife and son. It was impossible for Yunyan and Ning to wait for a second turning point to appear. The wine and food were soon prepared. Yunyan and Ning sat down. As they watched Solitary Westgate and Qin Yu drink, their eyes were filled with joy. It seemed that it had been a long time since a guest had come to their home. After Ning and Qin Yu became a little more familiar with each other, they began to chat. Uncle Qin, just what is the outside world like? In this world, are there really large birds that can cover the skies just by spreading their wings? I want to see the sea, but Father said that I was too young and that I would be picked up by the big fish in the sea. Is that right? I'm bored at home. Father often goes out and only Mother accompanies me. I want to go out and take a look. Can you take me? Looking at Ning's innocent eyes and the longing on her face, Qin Yu felt his heart ache. He put down his wine cup and smiled. And Ning, be obedient. The outside world isn't safe, and your father doesn't trust you to go out. But Uncle guarantees you that it won't be long before Ning leaves this place. Really? But if that's the case, then Father has already said it. And Ning's eyes brightened before dimming. Solitary Westgate said, believe in your Uncle Qin's words. He won't lie to you. Night arrived, and Ning and Yunyang fell asleep one after another. Qin Yu waited outside the courtyard. After a long time, Solitary Westgate came out a bit tired. The reason you arranged a fast transmission channel in the Tao Arena under the heavens is because sister-in-law and nephew might encounter a situation at any time, right? To resist the samsara of the heavenly Tao, even someone as strong as Solitary Westgate would inevitably have to pay a price. Solitary Westgate rubbed his temples. That's right. As time passes, their situation becomes worse and worse. I'm worried. He looked at Qin Yu. So, if possible, I ask that you become stronger as soon as possible and reach a level that transcends life and death. Only then can I bring you to open that secret. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Let's go. Let's discuss what we should do next. If he couldn't find Woodchopper Fu, then he could only end the life and death battle ahead of time. Although there were many powerhouses in the land of divinity and demons, there weren't many that had the qualifications to be Qin Yu's whetstone. Taking a step back, even if there were, he couldn't recklessly attack. Otherwise, even if he was the demonic path's holy sovereign, he still wouldn't be able to withstand the anger of the masses. In this world, there was no one that could truly be unshackled, not even the supreme beings of this world. Solitary Westgate nodded. He flicked his sleeves and opened up a channel. The two of them left this separate, small world. Walala! The moment they stepped into the channel, Qin Yu could clearly hear the sound of waves. Solitary Westgate's figure paused for a moment, and Ning wanted to see the sea, but he didn't know that beneath the clouds and fog that obscured his line of sight was the boundless and endless sea. This sort of sorrow was something he had to endure, but it was even more deeply branded in Solitary Westgate's heart. It was like a hot iron that constantly burned at his heart. Even if he was a supreme being of this world and possessed unsurpassed authority, so what if he could cause the heavens to collapse and the earth to sink in with just a thought? In the end, he was still a lonely man whose wife had died and his son had died. Drifting abyss, seeking survival cities, Tao Arena. Solitary Westgate and Qin Yu walked out one after another, and the channel vanished with them. Although only several hours had passed after what happened just now, The relationship between the two of them had become even closer. Woodchopper Fu is a qualified whetstone, but since I can't find him now, I can only stop my plan to temper myself between life and death. After Solitary Westgate sat down, he went straight to the point. I know of a place that is a supreme treasure land for tempering one's will, but that place is extremely dangerous. If the demonic path didn't tell you about it, then they should have some scruples about it. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. If I don't go, Westgate, what do you think are my chances of surviving the backlash of the demon mark? Solitary Westgate lifted a finger. At most 10% or even lower. Qin Yu said, "The reason I am risking my life is because I cherish my life. If there is a greater chance that I can live on, then I will fight for it. Moreover, my luck has always been extremely good. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me to emerge from that waning land of exiles and have my current achievements." Solitary Westgate lightly said, "Although I also hope that you will go, I must make things clear to you. Since ancient times, there have been many people that have entered the sealed stone world, but the number of people that have been able to come out is no more than 10. In the rumors, only by tempering one's will to the point that it can affect reality, that is, when one's will become substantialized, can one break open the world and return to the land of divinity and demons. Consider it carefully. If you are interested, then I will tell you more about the sealed stone world." Qin Yu said, "There is no need to consider it. I will go." Solitary Westgate nodded. "Very good. If you hesitate, then I will urge you to give up. If you don't even have the courage to fight, then it is impossible for you to leave the sealed stone world." Qin Yu said, "I'm all ears." Half a day later, Qin Yu bid his farewells with Yu Qi. He had already decided to go to the sealed stone world, but before that he needed to return to the demonic path to make some arrangements. He had already received a sufficient lesson from the Sea of Purgatory. Before he left, he naturally had to make preparations to deal with any accidents. "If you dare to abandon me and vanish without a trace, I will immediately commit suicide." Yu Qi's words cut off any room for Qin Yu to persuade her. Her expression was earnest, without any hint of joking at all. Qin Yu hesitated again and again before finally swallowing his words. His heart was touched. Follow each other in life and death was a simple phrase. But how many people in this world could truly accomplish this? To encounter it was his life's greatest fortune. 10 days later, the demonic path's Holy Emperor Palace was sealed off. The Holy Sovereign announced that he would be going into seclusion. Demonic energy billowed into the heavens. On the same day, Qin Yu looked at the demon envoy. He lightly said, "I cannot be sure what the result will be, but I hope that you will not disappoint me again." He turned and floated away with Yu Qi, leaving behind the demon envoy. The demon envoy stood where he was, his complexion uncertain. After a long time, the demon envoy bowed. "Your Majesty, rest assured that this subordinate will complete your orders no matter the cost." In truth, the sealed stone world was only a name given by the cultivator who first discovered it because of a half-broken stone tablet. Where did it come from? What background did it have? Why did it arrive in the land of divinity and demons? These were all mysteries. No one knew the answer to this day. But there was one thing that was certain. The sealed stone within the sealed stone world had a formidable tempering effect on a cultivator's will. 80 million years ago, the first cultivator to leave the sealed stone world was called Zhou Rui. He rose like a comet, sweeping through the world and establishing a transcendent empire. He became the first transcendent great emperor in history to unify the land of divinity and demons. Zhou Rui was the founding great emperor of the great Zhou Empire. In the Sea of Purgatory, he was a terrifying existence that had once appeared like a divine dragon. This founding great emperor's most terrifying method was the suppression of his will. His peak record was a single battle where he defeated 5 super powerhouses at the same level and killed 3 of them. He was known as the world's #1 powerhouse in the endless river of time for the last 100 million years. It was because of this that the sealed stone world was valued by the world. There was a time when a tide of people flocked to it, but as time passed, the cruel reality was gradually revealed. When the people of the world discovered that entering the sealed stone world meant eternal imprisonment, this tide soon dissipated. But the truth was that for the last tens of millions of years, there had always been people that entered the sealed stone world. Some were driven to a dead end, and their lifespans reached the limit. Some tried to break through their shackles and step into a higher realm. There were also some influences that were simple. In order to have a chance to create an incomparably powerful existence, they took the initiative to send their subordinates in. Emperor Zhou's existence was the best example of what motivated them to constantly send people into the sealed stone world. Of course, because Emperor Zhou was far too dazzling, he overshadowed the glory of others. In truth, for the last tens of millions of years, there were others that left the sealed stone world. Each one of them was unparalleled in their generation, possessing the strength to suppress their entire era. And in order to enter the sealed stone world, one first needed to obtain a key. This key was a special stone bead, and there was only one place one could find it. As mentioned before, the 7 empires divided the endless territory of the land of divinity and demons. But there were always some places that they couldn't touch. For instance, Flowing Abyss, or, for instance, Jilu. It was located within the territory of the Han Empire, but since ancient times, it had always been autonomous. This was because the one that ruled this land was the Stone Sealing Sect. And in the entire world, the Stone Sealing Sect was the only influence that could take out the sealed stone world. Over the endless years, there were people that tried to take control of the entire Stone Sealing Sect. Some people even tried to steal the method to create the stone beads. But without exception, all of their attempts ended in failure. Perhaps it wasn't appropriate to say that they failed, because even though they had taken control of the Stone Sealing Sect and captured everyone in the sect, they couldn't find a method to create the stone beads. In fact, they couldn't even obtain an extra stone bead. Killing people was useless. No matter how heavy the casualties were, no one from the Stone Sealing Sect relented. In the end, in order to prevent the stone beads from going extinct, there were always influences that interfered and protected the inheritance of the Stone Sealing Sect. After this happened several times, no one dared to attack the Stone Sealing Sect again. If everyone wanted the stone beads, they would honestly participate in the Stone Sealing Sect's auction. Any influence that directly attacked the Stone Sealing Sect will not be able to obtain a single stone bead. If someone privately transfers a stone bead, they will also lose the qualifications to obtain a stone bead. Qin Yu softly said. He looked up at the common-looking building in front of him and said, "We've arrived." Yu Qi's eyes widened, a blank look on her face. She never imagined that the Stone Sealing Sect, which had such a legendary history, would auction off the stone beads in such a place. Qin Yu stepped forward and knocked on the door. After the person opened it, he handed over the jade archive. The stiff-faced young cultivator lowered his head and examined it. Then he put away the jade archive and coldly said, "Please come in." The outside of the room wasn't remarkable, and the inside was even more cramped. But the young cultivator walked to a wooden cabinet in the corner and placed a hand on it. The surface of the cabinet immediately lit up with runes that wove together, forming a dazzling fluctuation. "2 guests, please." Qin Yu didn't hesitate. He pulled Yu Qi and stepped inside. The world around them twisted and brightened. The 2 of them had appeared in an extremely grand hall. In the center of the hall was a high platform. Stone chairs were arranged around the high platform, and over half of the stone chairs were already occupied by cultivators. Everyone was covered in a layer of light that concealed their appearances and auras. There was no need to worry that others would remember them. "2 guests, please take a seat. The auction will soon begin." A female Stone Sealing Sect cultivator respectfully said. but her expression was similarly cold. According to the directions, Qi Niu and Yu Qi soon sat down. After waiting for a moment, a white-eyebrowed old man stepped onto the high platform and announced the start of the auction. In today's auction, there are a total of 12 stone beads. Of these, 6 are low grade, 4 are medium grade, and 2 are high grade. Perhaps there are some new fellow Taoists that might not be aware of the grading of stone beads. High, medium grade, and low grade stone beads can all be used to enter the sealed stone world. But low grade stone beads do not have the ability to resist. A medium grade stone bead can resist the annihilation of will once, and a high grade stone bead can resist it 3 times. The annihilation of will refers to the terrifying aura that suddenly erupts within the sealed stone world. There are no rules to its appearance, and it is the strongest threat within the sealed stone world. Everyone, please be aware that our auction house only accepts spirit stones for bidding. All right, let us begin the auction now. We will start with the low-grade stone beads. The first stone bead's base price is 10 million spirit stones, and there is no limit to the amount of additional bids. The hall was filled with excited shouts. High-grade stone beads were something that could only be encountered through a stroke of luck. Much less today. 2 had appeared. However, many people were well aware that the price of high-grade stone beads was terrifyingly high, and it would be difficult to compete for them. It would be better to take advantage of the time when everyone's attention was focused on one of the low-grade stone beads. Thus, there was no awkward silence in the auction. 6 low-grade stone beads were quickly sold off, and the following 4 medium-grade stone beads also found their own buyers after a short struggle. The last 2 are also the only 2 high-grade stone beads today. The base price is 100 million spirit stones, and there is no limit to the amount of additional bids. The first stone bead will be auctioned off. Chapter 6:25. The hall fell silent. Everyone's hearts shook. Many gloomy eyes gathered from all directions, each one of them emitting a hostile aura. There were many people competing for the 2 high-grade stone beads. Although everyone knew that the final price would be high, they still found it hard to accept Qi Yu's bidding method. Humph! 1 billion! A guest coldly sneered and shouted out a bid, a mocking look in his eyes. Calling out a high price to scare away other competitors was indeed a good method in an auction. But today it was useless. As expected, several more people continued to bid, pushing the price to 5 billion spirit stones. The ones competing now were all cultivators with great backgrounds. The reason they entered the sealed stone world was to constantly grow stronger so that one day they could leave. But they might not be willing to go. In order to appease them, the influences behind them would tolerate some of their insolence. For instance, spending spirit stones to buy a life-saving high-grade stone bead was tacitly agreed upon. Qi Yu lifted his hand. 3 billion. He directly doubled it. Many of the cultivators that came to bid for the stone beads immediately paled. Although they had large families and businesses, they still couldn't withstand such a terrifying price. It was reasonable to buy a life-saving stone bead for a subordinate, but that had to be limited to a reasonable range. 1 billion. The first guest shouted out once more. His voice was icy cold like a winter storm. 2 billion. 3 billion. There were only 3 competitors left. Qi Yu raised his hand for the 3rd time. 5 billion. The dust settled. His momentum of winning was displayed to the fullest. In particular, that careless attitude of his made others feel uncertain. Whatever, there was still the 2nd high-grade stone bead. There was no need to pay such a great price for it. On the high platform, the old man from the sealed stone sect shouted out, 5 billion. If no other fellow Taoists increase the price, the stone bead will belong to this guest. After several breaths of time, the entire hall fell silent. The old man waved his hand and said, "Sold. Congratulations to this guest." Immediately, a sealed stone sect cultivator brought the stone bead over. Chinyu took out his spirit stone card and soon completed the transaction, dispelling the last hopes of some people. The auction continued. The stone sealing sect elder said, "The auction for the second high-grade stone bead will begin. Everyone, please grasp this opportunity. Perhaps there won't be another high-grade stone bead appearing for a very long time." The cultivator who bid right after Chinyu hurriedly said, 8 billion. Obviously, he wanted to use the same method to tell those who were fighting over the stone bead that he must get it. However, it was obvious that no one wanted to give up. After a few consecutive bids, the price rose all the way to 2 billion, which was even more shocking than the first one. Jiang Zhoudao's face paled. He turned his head and whispered something to the person beside him. The latter hesitated a little and nodded. 4 billion. No one should even think about competing with him. Sure enough, his opponents fell into silence. Jiang Zhoudao revealed a smile at the corner of his mouth. However, before he could smile completely, a calm voice sounded. 6 billion. Who? Jing Haodao turned his head and glared at Chinyu. This bastard. Earlier, he had already obtained a high-grade stone bead, but now he still wanted to interfere. 7 billion. Chinyu frowned and said 10 billion. These two high-grade stone beads just happened to belong to him and Yu Qi. Qin, you wouldn't miss out on any of them. As for spirit stones, as the demonic path's holy sovereign, a supreme existence of the world, wealth had already lost all meaning to him. Shua, Jing Haodao violently stood up. If looks could kill, Qin Yu would have already been dismembered. He was well aware that no matter how high his status was, the sect would never pay over 10 billion for a high-grade stone bead. In other words, it was impossible for him to bid again. How hateful! Within the world of the sealed stone, a high-grade stone bead could save his life twice. If he missed it today, he wouldn't be able to wait for the next auction. Moreover, even if he waited until the next auction, there might not be another high-grade stone bead that would appear. Taking a deep breath, Jing Haodao turned and left the grand hall. On the high platform, the old man from the sealed stone sect revealed a bit of surprise. He lifted his hand and said, 10 billion spirit stones. Congratulations to this fellow Taoist for winning another high-grade stone bead. After the payment was completed and the second stone bead was taken, Chinyu didn't stay. He pulled Yu Qi and left. Walala, within the grand hall, most of the cultivators participating in the auction had left. 2 high-grade stone beads had a total value of 15 billion spirit stones. This was more than enough to attract everyone's attention. Moreover, they were currently in Julu, a land of chaos where there was no order. As long as they left the auction house, there would definitely be people making a move. They didn't need to join in, but there was no harm in watching the fun. If their luck was good, who knew what would happen in the end? But contrary to everyone's expectations, after Chinyu and Yu Qi left the auction house, they vanished in front of everyone like ghosts. No matter how crazily they searched, they couldn't find any trace of them. Finally, they could only helplessly disperse. In the folded space, Chinyu had a calm expression. He stood with Yu Qi not too far away from the entrance of the auction house. As he saw those people leave, the excitement on his face gradually turned to disappointment. Let's go. Chinyu pulled Yu Qi and left. The folded space continued to extend forward, like a silent pool of flowing mercury. The function of the space-time lock wasn't just to suppress and imprison others. It could also create a space that overlapped with the main world and serve as a temporary shelter. Unless one's cultivation reached a boundary that transcended life and death like solitary Westgates, it would be difficult to sense the traces of the space-time lock. After entering the sealed stone world, he could encounter dangers at any time. The space-time lock was the only way for Chinyu to rest and resist the backlash of the demon mark. 3 days after the auction ended, in a cave in the wilderness of Julu, Chinyu and Yu Qi stood side by side, holding hands. The stone beads in their hands lit up at the same time. A fluctuation erupted. Like a disturbed surface of water, the two figures were swallowed up from sight. In the void, countless stones of different shapes and sizes quietly floated in the air, spinning at a fixed speed like a boundless nebula. Suddenly, the void twisted, and two figures rushed out. The woman bent over and violently coughed. The man hugged her and gently patted her back. It was only after a long time that she recovered and shook her head, indicating that she was much better. These two people were Qin Yu and Yu Qi, who had been transmitted into the sealed stone world through the stone beads. The transmission just now could be said to have been a dizzying, tumbling world. Even with Qin Yu's cultivation, he still felt short of breath. As for Yu Qi, if it weren't for him protecting her, the crushing strength of the transmission would have been enough to crush her to pieces. This is the sealed stone world, Yu Qi mumbled. She looked at the endless stone kingdom in front of her. Qin Yu nodded, a dignified look on his face. In his eyes, every stone contained a formidable aura. It was like the passage of billions of years, the countless calamities and tribulations they had experienced, yet none of them were able to destroy them in the slightest. This was a kind of eternal and immortal will. Qin Yu's heart raced, and great waves rose up in his mind. He couldn't imagine just what level of existence could leave behind an indelible mark on these stones. Qin Yu, what is it? Yu Qi revealed a worried expression. Qin Yu took a deep breath. It's nothing. It's just that I suddenly feel very small. There was always a higher mountain, a stronger person. At this moment, Qin Yu suddenly had a profound understanding. He didn't know the origin of the sealed stone world, but had inevitably witnessed an unimaginable glory. That was a level that Qin Yu couldn't touch at his current realm. The difference was like the heavens and earth. Yu Qi had a thoughtful look. These stones, are they amazing? Qin Yu nodded. Yes, they are very, very amazing. He casually pointed a finger. If I can reach 1/10 of the level of the remnant while on these stones, then the problem of the demon mark backlash will be easily solved. Ah! Yu Qi cried out in alarm. She finally understood why Qin Yu had sighed with emotion. She immediately revealed a happy expression. Then, these stones will be of great help to you? Qin Yu said, I don't know right now, but I'm preparing to give it a try. He glanced at the endless void behind him. Although he didn't know what was hidden in that void, his intuition told him that it was best not to satisfy his own curiosity. He took a step forwards and approached the outermost stone. When he was within 100 feet of it, his complexion changed. A boundless pressure suddenly came crashing down. It was like a mountain pressing down on his chest, and he had to focus his mind to resist it. Qin Yu closed his eyes. After sensing for a long time, he smiled. Yes, this was the place he needed. Yu Qi, I'm going to start cultivating. You first. Before he finished speaking, Qin Yu frowned. He looked into the distant void. Following the nebula formed by the stones, several distressed figures were moving forwards. Several of them had pale faces. It was clear they had been injured. Get behind me. Qin Yu grabbed Yu Qi and welcomed the several people flying towards them. A cultivator screamed, Hurry and run. The people in the sealed stone world want to steal our stone beads. Before his voice fell, this person's eyes widened. With a miserable scream, his chest burst open. A black shadow flowed out. It stretched out and turned into a cultivator. His 5 fingers held onto the still boiling hot and beating heart. He laughed in an incomparably cheerful manner. I don't like killing people, but little fellows, why can't you be obedient and listen to me? Schwa, schwa. Several black-clothed cultivators caught up, surrounding the group. Pa! The heart was crushed and blood splashed onto the corners of the cultivator's lips. He licked it and revealed an expression of enjoyment. He almost moaned, I'll give you one last chance. Honestly cut off all ties with me and hand over the stone beads. Otherwise, after I catch you, I won't mind steaming half of you and frying the other half. To say such words in such a tone was especially cold and sinister, like a viper coiling around their necks. The several people that were surrounded instantly lost all color. Suddenly, a cultivator shouted out, "Senior, I know a place where you can find high-grade stone beads. As long as you let me go, I will immediately tell you." High-grade stone beads? The blood-sucking cultivator's eyes brightened. "You should know that if you lie to me, your fate will be miserable, right?" Jiangzhou Island suppressed his fear and nodded. "This junior guarantees that as long as you agree, I will soon find the stone beads." The blood-sucking cultivator nodded. "Very good. You've successfully moved me. I will give you the promise you want. You can speak now." Jiangzhou Island pointed a finger. "Those two people each have a high-grade stone bead on them." Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and Yu Chi's figure vanished. He looked up at Jiangzhou Island, his expression calm. When this person spoke, he had already expected it. Now he was only confirming it. The blood-sucking cultivator's pupils shrank. He chuckled. "Interesting, very interesting." He looked at Qin Yu. After several breaths of silence, he suddenly said, "Hand over 2 high-grade stone beads, and I will let you go." Qin Yu shook his head. The blood-sucking cultivator's eyes turned. He pointed at Jiangzhou Island and said, "How about adding his life? As long as you agree, I will immediately kill him." Jiangzhou Island's face filled with anger. "Senior, you promised me," the blood-sucking cultivator coldly sneered. "Promise? That sort of thing can only deceive you newbies that have just arrived in the sealed stone world." He looked at Qin Yu. "I'm very sincere. How about it?" Qin Yu lightly said, "His life isn't worth anything." The blood-sucking cultivator shook his head. "Then there's nothing else I can do. It looks like I will have to do it myself. I hope that your strength is proportional to your confidence." Bang! A tyrannical strength broke out from his body, accompanied by a disdainful aura. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, and his face paled. Chapter 6, 26. The world of the sealed stone was broken and incomplete. No one could predict whether or not those peaceful and harmless sealing stones would erupt with terrifying fluctuations in the next moment that could instantly annihilate one's consciousness. This sort of fluctuation was called will destruction. It could instantly kill all life within its range. The cultivators that had entered the sealed stone world earlier had experienced just how terrifying this will destruction was. Their icy gazes fell onto the newcomers that had just entered. Thus, this was what happened today. They had stolen the stone bead of a newcomer to increase their own safety. The bloodthirsty cultivator was named Song Zhongyi. He was a slightly famous character in the sealed stone world. His methods were bloody and cruel, and very few people were willing to offend him. Of course, he wasn't weak. By borrowing the tempering of the sealed stone world, he had smoothly stepped into the calamity immortal realm. This was the fundamental reason he was able to live until now. Qin Yu placed Yu Qi into the space-time lock's replicated world. Song Zhongyi lost his sense of her. Thus a sense of dread rose in his heart. If it weren't for the temptation of the high-grade stone bead being too great, he wouldn't have done anything. The sealed stone world seemed calm and peaceful, but because of the struggle for the stone bead, the degree of brutality was hard to imagine. Those that survived all held a deep reverence towards life and wouldn't easily take risks with their lives. However, since they attacked, they wouldn't hold back at all. They would do everything in their power to kill their opponents and allow themselves to survive. At this time, Qin Yu felt as if an iron rod had ruthlessly struck him in the head. His field of vision darkened and his ears buzzed. In this state, even if he tried to attack, his strength would be greatly reduced. Bang! With a loud explosion, Qin Yu drew backwards. The strength that crashed into his body was like flowing magma, wildly rampaging about, carrying with it a horrifying destructive attribute. Wherever it went, his flesh and blood cracked apart. In just the blink of an eye, Qin Yu had turned into a burnt doll. His skin was covered in cracks, but not a single drop of blood flowed out from these cracks. At this moment, the strength of a saint's step demon body was fully displayed. His heart wildly beat, and his rich blood energy erupted with it. The wounds on his skin rapidly healed and healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. As long as it wasn't a fatal injury, he could recover in a short period of time. Song Jongi smiled. No matter how strong your mortal body is, there will come a time when it can't withstand it. It seems that your self-confidence will ultimately kill you. The power of words could also place a powerful psychological pressure on an opponent. Unfortunately, this wasn't of any use to Chinyu. His heart had already been tempered to a formidable degree, and besides a few people he cared about, he wouldn't be shaken by the outside world. The suppression of will still existed, but after the initial shock, Chinyu gradually adapted to it. His eyes brightened and his gaze became firm. Perhaps the one who will die today will be you. He raised his hand and punched out. Berserk power surged out. Song Jongi sneered and flicked his sleeves to neutralize it. You won't cry until you see the coffin. Today, I will send you to the west. Chinyu fell into an absolute disadvantage. He was like a human-shaped ball that was sent flying back and forth. But Song Jongi's complexion became increasingly ugly. This was because, as time passed, the strength that Chinyu erupted with was gradually becoming stronger. From a rubber ball, it turned into a stone ball, and then it began to evolve into an iron ball. Even if he was sent flying away, the shaking strength was still giving him a headache. Song Jongi paled. He had no choice but to accept reality. He didn't have the qualifications to kill Chinyu, and if he continued, there was a chance he would be killed instead. In truth, the reason was simple. Chinyu's will was already firm and tyrannical enough. He was like a raw stone that, under the polishing of Song Jongi, began to bloom. Bang! With another loud explosion, Song Jongi stuffily coughed and drew back. He looked at the pale-faced Chinyu, whose aura was even stronger than before. He cursed inwardly at this freak of nature. Without a word, he turned and walked away. If he continued, he wouldn't be able to leave even if he wanted to. Chinyu was fighting to his heart's content. He simply didn't want to stop, but after taking a single step, he stopped and secretly sighed. Song Jongi was slightly weaker than him, but because of the suppression of will, he was able to suppress him. To Chinyu, he could be considered the perfect sparring partner. In a fight, Chinyu could rapidly adapt to the suppression of will and also strengthen his own will. If it weren't for him worrying about the backlash of the demon mark, Chinyu would never have let him leave so easily. Jiang Zhoudao was dumbfounded. After a moment of absent-mindedness, his face suddenly lost all color. He never imagined that the insufferably tyrannical Song Jongi would actually be scared away, of course. He never imagined that Chinyu would actually have a calamity immortal cultivation. Big brother, you are already a calamity immortal. Wouldn't it be better if you stayed in the land of divinity and demons and enjoyed your life? Why did you come to the sealed stone world to harm people? Puff! Jiang Zhoudao fell to his knees. Senior, I have eyes but failed to see. I beg you to show mercy. In my next life, Pa! His head exploded and red and white matter flew out. You drew back his hand without expression. If apologies were useful, then no one would have died in this world. Today he was strong enough. If it were anyone else, they would have already suffered a calamity. Senior, please spare us. The other cultivators were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Their bodies shivered with fear. Chinyu glanced at them and lightly said, You can all leave. Although they were the ones who led Song Jongi and the others here, it wasn't intentional. The person who was killed just now had even warned them. Chinyu didn't fear killing others, but he also didn't want to indulge himself in slaughtering the innocent. Everyone had to have their own bottom line. Thank you, Senior. Thank you, Senior. After surviving calamity, the several people kowtowed repeatedly and crawled up to leave. If they didn't leave now, did they want to wait for Chinyu to change his mind? After these people left, Chinyu turned and walked away. Although he had scared away Song Zhongi, he didn't think he could rampage through the sealed stone world. After tens of millions of years, countless cultivators had entered. Although the vast majority of them had died, those that survived were absolutely masters. Within the sealed stone world, there were definitely terrifying level powerhouses. Qin, you naturally had to be a bit more cautious. After flying far away, Qin Yu came to a stop. He already understood that although the outermost region of the sealed stone world didn't seem to have any pressure, the truth was that it was the most dangerous place. Anyone who wanted to steal the stone bead could fly out from the nebula and accidentally meet him there. The best method was to enter the nebula as soon as possible. At that time, it would be much safer. With a thought, Yu Qi appeared in front of him. Qin Yu said, "I will immediately begin cultivating. Do you want to wait for me or come with me?" Yu Qi directly said, "I'll come with you." With her current cultivation, the disparity between her and Qin Yu's was far too great. If she wanted to be with him forever, she would have to work hard to follow in his footsteps. Qin Yu nodded. "Good. Remember not to force yourself. If anything goes wrong, I will immediately transfer you to the duplicate world." The sealed stone cannot be duplicated, so the duplicate world can only be a narrow space used for hiding or seclusion. Moreover, it cannot be moved. The two of them each chose a sealed stone. After approaching a 100-foot radius, they sat down cross-legged. Yu Qi soon stopped cultivating. She hurriedly stood up and withdrew from the suppression range. She was panting and sweating. She looked up at the motionless Qin Yu, a look of anticipation in her eyes. You had to succeed. At this time, Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. He stood up and walked forwards. He soon arrived in front of the sealed stone he chose and placed a hand on it. A warm feeling gushed out, directly fusing into his mind. Qin, you could clearly feel his will rising. This was an indescribable feeling. It was mysterious and mystical, but it truly existed, leaving one lost in it. After a long time, Qin Yu let out a long breath. He smiled. It was only now that Yu Qi dared to speak. "Qin Yu, what is it?" Qin Yu turned and said, "I have already obtained the approval of this sealed stone. Now, the outermost sealed stone no longer suppresses me." Yu Qi's eyes brightened. "Then you," Qin Yu nodded. "I've had a great harvest. Not only can the suppression of the sealed stone sharpen my will, but after obtaining its approval, I can also obtain a gift. That should be that if I place the aura of the person with the undying will on these sealed stones, it can directly increase the intensity of my will." He looked at the nebula formed by endless stones, sealed stones, in front of him, and a warm current surged in his chest. The deeper one went into the sealed stone nebula. The larger they would be, and the stronger the will contained would be. If one day he could really reach the end, Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his surging emotions. He said, "Yu Qi, I'm going to continue cultivating." Yu Qi hurriedly said, "Don't worry about me, just continue." Qin Yu nodded. After walking forwards several hundred feet, he chose a slightly larger sealed stone and sat down cross-legged in the void. Looking at his back, Yu Qi revealed a proud expression. Before entering the sealed stone world, she had specifically looked up information on this. Although the outermost sealed stone didn't contain a strong will, the fact that Qin Yu was able to pass through it so quickly proved how strong he was. However, to find such a powerful man, she felt a great deal of pressure. Pursing her lips, Yu Qi took a deep breath. She walked into the range of the will suppression and closed her eyes to cultivate. In the quiet sealed stone world, it was nearly impossible to sense the passage of time. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. The sealed stone world in front of Qin Yu had changed from the initial size of half a person to the current size of several feet. Its color seemed to have deepened and a halo of light occasionally flashed on its surface. 2 months ago, Yu Qi had no choice but to enter the space-time lock's replicated world. Her ability to withstand pressure simply couldn't compare with Qin Yu's, and if the two of them were too far apart, there was a chance of an accident occurring. Luckily, Yu Qi didn't mind this at all. Instead, she comforted Qin Yu. After entering the replicated world, she could also cultivate, and it wouldn't be hard to pass the time. At the start, Qin Yu would often enter the replicated world to see her, but afterwards he was driven out by Yu Qi and told to concentrate on cultivating. In any case, every time Qin Yu moved, he would need to temporarily put away the replicated world. At that time, they would naturally meet again. Shua! Qin Yu's eyes flashed open, a crystalline light flashing in them. He stood up and let out a light breath. After spending 4 days, he had finally obtained its approval. He took several quick steps forwards and arrived above the sealed stone that was several dozen feet wide. He reached out a hand and carefully felt the warmth that fused into his body. After a long time, he opened his eyes. He turned around and looked at the endless sealed stones. As he thought back to his 3 months of improvement, Qin Yu couldn't help but smile. In these 3 months, the demon mark had suffered a backlash several times, but he had resisted it each time. Although it was still dangerous, it was much easier than before. The demon mark seemed to have sensed that Qin Yu's will had become stronger. It seemed to be accumulating strength. Almost a month had passed since the last backlash, and there were no signs of it activating. Perhaps it was looking for a suitable opportunity. The revolution has not yet succeeded. Comrade, you still need to work hard, Qin Yu whispered. Although he was a bit puzzled by the Dao Arena Master's words, he understood the general meaning behind them. With a thought, Qin Yu vanished and entered the replicated world. The replicated world was only several dozen feet in size. Sensing Qin Yu's arrival, Yu Qi's eyes moved. She slowly opened them and revealed an incomparably brilliant smile. Qin Yu suddenly felt a deep sense of guilt. He had been left alone in the replicated world. It was completely silent and deathly silent. He had experienced this sort of dreariness before, so he naturally understood it better. I'm sorry. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Yu Qi. She hugged Qin Yu and said, Don't say sorry to me. As long as I am with you, that is what I love the most. Qin Yu took a deep breath, smelling the fragrance on her body. After several breaths of silence, he suddenly said, Xin Yuanin is likely Ningling. She has her own difficulties, so she cannot recognize me. There were some words that he had to make clear, even if it would seem heartless. Yu Qi looked up. I understand. Qin Yu frowned. Yu Qi reached out a hand and stroked the point between his eyebrows. In the past, I didn't want to jump in, nor could I. But since Ning Ling gave me a chance, I must accept the consequences. She wrinkled her nose. Don't think about leaving me behind. Don't ever think about it. Feeling her sincerity, warmth flowed through Qin Yu's heart. He tightly held onto her. That's enough. Don't be so wishy-washy. Whether or not we can leave is still uncertain. If we are trapped here forever, then let Ning Ling regret it for the rest of her life. Qin Yu smiled. Don't worry, we will definitely leave this place. Shua! The replication space dissipated. Qin Yu appeared holding Yu Qi, resisting the crushing will around him. We should continue. At this time, Qin Yu's complexion changed. He lifted a hand and slapped behind him. A figure appeared in the void and was shaken away. What keen senses! This person's voice was hoarse and his entire body was wrapped in black fog. One could only faintly see a pair of yellowish-brown eyes, cold and gloomy. Qin Yu coldly said, Who are you? Why did you sneak attack us? The black fog cackled several times. It's very simple. I am very curious. Just how did you manage to pass through the sealed stone world's tempering and obtain its recognition so quickly? Qin Yu's tone became even colder. Have you been following us for a long time? The black fog didn't deny it. I originally wanted to capture this woman to threaten you, but now it seems I won't have that chance. Brett, let me remind you, the sealed stone world is far more dangerous than you think. If you bring such a burden with you, sooner or later something will happen to you. Schwa. The black fog flew far away, vanishing into the group of sealed stones. Qin Yu frowned. He never thought that the black fog would leave, and its final words seemed to be a reminder. Just who was this person in the black fog? Yu Qi bit her lips. She suddenly said, Qin Yu, no matter who he is, what he said is correct. If I follow you, I will indeed be a burden. You don't need to explain, I know what I mean. Qin Yu, I remember that you have a portable space that can hold life forms. How about I go inside? No. Qin Yu said in a low voice. Looking at her complexion, his tone softened. The portable space you speak of is a special identity token. Although it has a formidable defensive ability, it cannot resist the crushing will of the outside world. Unless I completely seal it off, Yu Qi's eyes brightened. Then seal it off. Qin Yu earnestly said, You don't understand. If you completely seal off the token space, you won't be able to see the outside world, and all light will be lost. It will be like an eternal night. If you stay inside, you will have to withstand a torment 10 times, 100 times more intense than in the replicated world. Yu Qi said, I can do it. She smiled. You seem to have always underestimated me. In the past, when I was sealed off in the Holy Emperor Palace, the pressure and fear I withstood was no less than what you have just said. But I am still fine. Moreover, I know that you are outside, right beside me. Qin Yu, I know you are distressed. But for me to enter the token space, whether it is for you or for me, is the best choice. Don't hesitate any longer. Qin Yu looked at her. After a long time, he let out a long breath. He took out a jade slip and poured in his divine sense before handing it to Yu Qi. If you can't withstand it, immediately crush it. Do you understand? Yu Qi received the jade slip. Don't worry, I will listen to you. Now send me in. Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and Yu Qi vanished. The space that came with the Saint Sun token was like a slowly closing window, finally isolating all light. In the pitch-black darkness, Yu Qi took a deep breath. As the future mistress of the Holy Emperor Palace, how could I fear the darkness? This is the best chance for me to overcome my psychological flaws. You can do it! You can do it! The figure wrapped in black fog stopped after it was far away from Qin Yu. Then, like a bubble beneath the sunlight, it suddenly burst and vanished from sight. A faint voice passed through the air. It's been a long time since I've seen such a talented junior. I only gave him a little reminder. It shouldn't be against the rules, right? It definitely isn't. At the end of the voice, there was a hint of relaxed joy, as if it had put down a heavy psychological burden. The deeper one went into the world of the sealed stone. The more spacious it became. This was because the volume of the sealed stone was constantly expanding. It gradually grew from several dozen feet, hundreds of feet to several thousand feet. 1 year later, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged. Across from him was a giant sealed stone the size of a hill. His mind was completely focused on resisting the formidable will that seemed to contain the might of the heavens and earth. He closed his eyes, and a blurry and distorted figure appeared in his mind. Even so, it was enough to shock the heart. Looking at this figure, it was like there was nothing else in the world, and his entire mind was filled with this figure. Disdainful, powerful, invincible. Qin Yu's intuition told him that this figure was the one who had bestowed the undying will upon the sealed stones. He had already stayed in front of this sealed stone for over 20 days. Even so, he didn't feel anxious at all. This was because he was well aware that the sealed stones will have been tempered to a new level. Once he obtained its approval, there would surely be great harvests. What he needed to do now was to work hard bit by bit to enhance his own will so that he could obtain the approval of the sealed stone. Suddenly, Qin Yu frowned. He stood up and stepped backwards, leaving the range of the will's suppression. With a thought, he entered the space-time lock world. Several breaths of time after he left, 5 figures howled over. The person in the front was clearly running away as he was being chased by the 4 behind him. Lei Zhen, it's impossible for you to escape. Hand over the stone bead. A cultivator roared out from behind. The person being chased clenched his teeth and cursed out loud. We agreed that everyone would use their own methods to search. It was my luck that I found the high-grade stone bead, so don't go too far. Cut the crap. I'm just asking you, are you going to hand it over or not? Don't even think about it. Lei Zhen cursed out loud. Of the 4 cultivators chasing him, one of them suddenly said, "We've locked onto you." He revealed a charming smile, and a yellow paper man appeared between his fingers. With his other hand, he picked up a wooden needle and pierced it through the paper man's chest. Ah! Lei Zhen cried out miserably. He clutched his chest and staggered backwards. From the yellow paper man's pierced chest, a dark red color spread out like blood. The cultivator took out a second wooden needle. Lei Zhen, why don't you keep running? Puff! One of the paper man's thighs was pierced through. Lei Zhen was shocked. He roared out in anger. Impossible, you didn't have the chance to place a curse on me. So how could I have been locked onto? As long as a person lives in this world, they will always encounter all sorts of unbelievable things. Luckily, you will soon be able to escape from this helpless situation. Another cultivator spoke up, his expression grim. Lei Zhen paled. We have been friends for many years. Don't kill me. I am willing to hand over the stone bead to you. It's already too late. What we want now isn't just the stone bead you just obtained, but also what you already have. The cursing cultivator lifted his thumb and middle finger. I want 2 medium-grade stone beads. You can divide the rest. The other 3 people frowned. After a moment of hesitation, they nodded in agreement. The cursing cultivator had a gentle expression. He said to Lei Zhen, "We have known each other for many years, and you are well aware of my methods. It is best if you obediently take them out. If I personally take action, you will suffer greatly." Lei Zhen's expression was fierce. He suddenly lifted a hand and slapped it between his eyebrows. "If you want to kill me, then let's die together." The cursing cultivator clenched his fist. With a loud cracking sound, the yellow paper man shattered into powder. Lei Zhen's fierce expression froze on his face. He placed his palm between his eyebrows but couldn't summon any strength. His aura rapidly dissipated. We agreed that the 2 medium-grade stone beads would belong to me. He turned his head and looked at the other 3 people. One of them shook his head. Lei Zhen is dead, so you can only take 1. Yes, take 1. Only like this can we divide them. The cursing cultivator had an ugly complexion. He cursed out loud, "Fine. But remember, I will take at least 1. Otherwise no one will have a good time." After clearing out Lei Zhen's belongings, he had just obtained a high-grade stone bead. He hadn't had time to recognize it as its master yet, so he naturally kept it in perfect condition. In addition, there was also a medium-grade stone bead, 2 low-grade stone beads, and some other treasures. The 4 people relaxed. Luckily, there was enough for everyone to divide. I will take the medium-grade stone bead first. You can divide the rest, the cursing cultivator said. He reached out a hand to take the stone bead, but at this time his eyes widened, revealing shock and anger. A layer of black light erupted, condensing into a powerful protective barrier behind him. But this wasn't able to block the fist that came at him from behind. It didn't stop at all. It smashed apart the black light and smashed apart the cursing cultivator's head. Shwa! A translucent little person flew out from the headless corpse. It glared at Qin Yu with hatred in its eyes and then turned to flee. Its speed was so fast that it was nearly impossible to follow with the naked eye. But suddenly, the little person cried out in panic. No! As if a terrifying swallowing strength had fallen onto its body. The little person was pulled back. Qin Yu grabbed it. The little person rapidly withered and vanished from sight. Within Qin Yu's soul space, the cosmic sea-cross bell that had been a step slower than Purple Moon in breaking free from the seal began to cry out in excitement. It was far, far too hungry. Qin Yu turned around. He looked at the 3 people across from him and lightly said, I want these stone beads." The complexions of the three people changed. Qin Yu had killed the cursing cultivator and had even used some strange method to extinguish his soul. In truth, they didn't want to provoke such a ruthless person. But who the stone beads belonged to wasn't something they could decide. If they returned empty-handed, they would surely be punished. One of them clenched his teeth and said, "Senior, we are working for Lord Frigid Flame. We can give you the medium-grade and low-grade stone beads, but please be generous with the high-grade stone beads." If Qin Yu had spent some more time in the sealed stone world, he might have heard of the famous heaven-freezing Frigid Flame. But what a pity, this name didn't deter him at all. "Leave behind the stone beads, or all of you can stay behind together," Qin Yu lightly said. He stepped forwards, and his aura broke out from his body like a towering mountain. If the three people across from him could freely move around here, it was clear that they had obtained the approval of the sealed stone world. But the disparity in absolute strength wasn't something that could be made up for with a simple increase in will. Moreover, with Qin Yu's current will, he could withstand the suppression of these three people. "Since Senior isn't willing to give up, then we will bid our farewells." The three people didn't dare to say anything else. They turned and hurried away. Since this person could easily kill the cursing cultivator, he wouldn't mind killing them as well. Moreover, the three of them were filled with apprehension. Just who was this strange powerhouse? Even after hearing Lord Frigid Flame's name, he didn't care at all. Would they dare to face such a character head-on? That was no different from seeking death. Qin Yu simply didn't know that he had unknowingly provoked an extremely powerful cultivator. After searching through the stone beads, he obtained 2 high-grade stone beads, 3 medium-grade stone beads, and 6 low-grade stone beads. The wealth of that cursing cultivator was unexpectedly rich. After entering the sealed stone world for a year, Qin Yu didn't know whether he was lucky or not, but he had already experienced a will destruction once. Even though several months had passed, the scene from that time was still vivid in his mind. Within his field of vision, all of the sealed stones began to tremble at the same frequency, like countless waves fusing together. Finally, they turned into monstrous waves that instantly swept out in all directions. Qin Yu's consciousness instantly went blank, and he lost the ability to think. It was unknown how much time passed before he regained his composure. There was a deep crack on the stone bead he had fused with. The crack was incomparably smooth, as if it had been slashed by a heavy saber. Qin Yu didn't doubt that if it weren't for the stone bead's strength resisting the will destruction, he would have died at that time. Comparing hearing and seeing, the former was far less shocking. After personally experiencing the baptism of the will destruction, Qin Yu's eagerness to obtain the stone beads became even more intense. Walking all the way here, including today's harvests, he had a total of 3 high-grade stone beads, 6 medium-grade stone beads, and 15 low-grade stone beads. However, as he thought about how he and Yu Qi needed the stone beads to protect their lives, the sealed space of the token was unable to isolate the will destruction. Qin Yu didn't feel satisfied at all. For things like stone beads, as long as one lived in the sealed stone world, the more the better. After carefully putting away the stone beads, Qin Yu looked through the other items. In the storage treasure of the cultivator who used the curse technique, he found a crystal rib bone. This bone actually gave him a somewhat familiar and oppressive feeling, divine bone. It was actually a rib bone left behind by a divine spirit after it died. It had to be known that divine spirits were the highest level of cultivators that Qin Yu knew of. They surpassed the current cultivation world of the land of divinity and demons by at least 2 large realms. Even if it was only a rib bone, it absolutely couldn't be underestimated. After carefully probing it with his divine sense, he discovered something else. Within this divine spirit rib bone, there were some cryptic fluctuations of energy hidden. This wasn't a divine sense or remnant soul, but a pure power that stored information. Qin Yu carefully probed it with his divine sense. After several breaths of time, he opened his eyes, a strange expression on his face. The information stored within was a cultivation method for the soul path. By taking a cultivator's hair and flesh and blood as a medium, one could use an invisible killing curse. When cultivated to the high divinity realm, one could even condense an aura in the void and directly send down killing tribulation. It was tyrannical and strange. It was clear that the strange method that the cultivator used just now was the cultivation method recorded in this divine spirit rib bone. However, there were restrictions to this cultivation method. Only women could cultivate it, and men could forcefully perceive it. However, their cultivation speed would be slow, and they would be forced to change their temperament. No wonder that person acted so strangely just now. Chinyu shook his head and put away the rib bone. He didn't care about what others did, but he absolutely wouldn't cultivate this sort of cultivation method. Giving it to you, Chi, shouldn't be a bad idea. Yes, he would do that. As usual, in order to avoid trouble, Chinyu flicked his sleeves and destroyed the corpses. His figure flickered, and he flew far away. He chose another sealing stone of the same level and continued to cultivate. Half a day later, 2 beams of light howled towards the place where Chinyu had left. After they faded away, the figures of 2 cultivators were revealed. Their eyes swept around, and their complexions darkened. That cultivator had really left. Damn! The person on the left said, Song Zhongyi, Lord Icefire's need for the stone beads is increasing. You've already failed twice during this time. If things continue like this, once the Lord becomes angry, even I will be implicated by you. Across from him, Song Zhongyi's complexion darkened. Do you think that's what I want? All right, take some from the storage first and satisfy Lord Icefire's needs. I will find a way to make up for it as soon as possible. Humph, that's for the best. The person turned and left. Song Zhongyi clenched his teeth. He didn't know what was going on, but ever since he encountered that abnormal newcomer, his luck had been terrible to the extreme. There was no need to mention the fact that he had to flee in panic that day, and then he encountered an old rival. Although he hadn't suffered a loss in that bloody battle, he had no choice but to leave early. As a result, he had managed to obtain a hunt with great difficulty, but in the end he had come up empty-handed. Now he had actually allowed a high-grade stone bead to slip away. He feared that Lord Icefire was already dissatisfied with him. He had to find a way to find a high-grade stone bead as soon as possible. Just as Song Zhongyi was about to turn and leave, he suddenly frowned. He spread out his 5 fingers and grasped. Some fluctuations in space that hadn't completely dissipated rapidly gathered in his palm, gradually forming the outline of a figure. Chapter 6, 27. Uncle could endure this, but Aunt couldn't. This was going too far. This was simply going too far. Song Zhongyi's lungs nearly exploded with rage. At this time there was only one thought in his mind, and that was to capture that bastard and cut him to pieces. He stomped around in a rage several times before his heated mind gradually calmed down. He thought about how long it had been since they first met, and then thought about his current position. Song Zhongyi immediately turned into a frosted eggplant. This bastard was truly a freak. In less than a year, he had managed to rush all the way from the outermost periphery of the sealed stone to here. The intensity of his will had definitely risen by an astonishing degree. Song Zhongyi couldn't help but admit that if he fought with Chinyu today, he feared he wouldn't be able to escape. His face was cloudy and uncertain. After a long time, he clenched his teeth and a cruel light surged in his eyes. If he killed him, not only would he be able to take revenge for his old grievances, but he would also be able to obtain at least 3 high-grade stone beads, perhaps even more. That's right, he wasn't Chinyu's match. But this was the sealed stone world. There was no such thing as fairness or morality. As long as he put out enough benefits, killing someone was simple. Song Zhongyi turned and walked away, vanishing from sight in a breath of time. Chin, you didn't know that a storm was about to descend upon him. As time passed, that blurry figure in his mind became increasingly clear. His intuition told him that when he could see this figure, he would obtain the approval of the sealed stone. But It was like water that was about to boil, but it was always lacking that little bit, unable to reach the boiling point. Qin Yu opened his eyes, a dignified expression on his face. He had tempered his will enough and had accumulated enough. What he lacked was a turning point for a qualitative change. He didn't know what this turning point was, but if he couldn't find it, he feared he would be delayed here for a long time. As he furrowed his eyebrows in deep thought, Qin Yu suddenly turned around. Besides the countless sealed stones, there was no one else. Just now he felt as if he was being watched. But now, when he tried to sense it, it had already disappeared. Was it an illusion? Qin Yu shook his head, suppressing these thoughts. He faced the sealed stone and fell into deep thought. The sealed stone world was a massive void. Floating in the void were countless large and small sealed stones. These sealing stones were arranged in a circle. The outermost small sealing stone was the first circle, followed by the slightly larger sealing stone, forming the second circle, and then the even larger sealing stone, forming the third circle. Sealing stones of the same level were relatively fixed in position. Thus, after Song Zhongyi vowed to kill Qin Yu, all he needed to do was follow the same circular trajectory and search from the location of the incident to the two sides. There was a high chance he would be able to find his position. As it turned out, Song Zhongyi's considerations were correct. "Brother Song, I found him." For figures were sitting cross-legged on a sealing stone that was 10,000 feet wide. One of them suddenly opened his eyes and revealed a smile. If he found the person, he would be able to obtain a mid-grade stone bead. This was an additional reward. After he killed the person, he would receive another reward. However, that person's perception was indeed astonishingly sharp. His divine ability could be said to be invisible and traceless, and he was actually almost discovered. However, looking at the three people beside him, Ji Yun quickly suppressed the restlessness in his heart. If the four of them joined forces, besides some heaven-defying characters, they would be able to rampage through the sealed stone world. Killing someone with a lower level of will would be easy. Moreover, he had no idea what benefits this Song Zhongyi had promised them to pull in that crazy woman, Meiruyu. With her help, it would be even safer. Song Zhongyi's eyes brightened. He said, "Brother Ji, please lead the way." Ji Yun nodded. "All right." Whoosh, whoosh, 4 figures shot out like arrows from a bow. They left the sealed stone and shot into the void, heading straight for Qin Yu. With a calamity immortal realm cultivation, even if they couldn't use teleportation, their speed was still astonishing. Around 2 hours later, Ji Yin said from the front, "He's up ahead." Song Zhongyi's aura suddenly rose and his speed increased. A figure soon appeared at the end of his line of sight. It was him, that bastard. He had ruined his plans time and time again. Today he would let him know just how the word death was written. Qin Yu frowned. As he looked at the 4 aggressive figures, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He had immediately recognized Song Zhongyi. He naturally understood that he wouldn't be able to live peacefully today. "Fellow Taoist, I never thought we would meet again today." Song Zhongyi coldly smiled. "I want to see whether or not you can escape from the hands of the 4 of us." He turned around. "Fellow Taoist Mei, I'll have to trouble you." The only female cultivator among the 4 of them was exceptionally beautiful. When she heard this, she took a step forward. A powerful will erupted from her body, releasing madness, ruthlessness, and destruction. This was no longer a simple suppression, but a direct attack on the level of will, an incomparably powerful attack. It was hard to imagine that beneath such beautiful skin was a soul that wished to destroy the entire world. Qin Yu's complexion changed, as if he had fallen into a swamp. His thoughts slowed down, and he found it hard to summon the strength in his body. "Kill!" Song Zhongyi roared out loud and was the first to attack. He lifted a hand and pointed forwards. Motes of crystal light appeared, condensing into an ice sword. Like a bolt of thunder, the ice sword pierced through space, leaving behind a series of afterimages as it stabbed towards Qin Yu's chest. Ji Yin formed law, seals with his hands. Faint traces of gray energy appeared, rapidly weaving together into the phantom of a small altar. He lifted his hand and tossed it upwards. The altar phantom vanished from sight. In the next moment, there was a loud rumbling sound above Qin Yu's head. An incomparably majestic altar projection with a dreadful momentum descended from nothingness. It was so thick that it seemed tangible and emitted a terrifying aura. The suppressive strength was like 1,000,000 mountains falling onto Qin Yu's body. The last of the four people was a cultivator with a baby face and a youthful appearance. At this time, he faintly smiled and took out a flute, placing it to his lips and blowing into it. There was no sound of the flute, but his expression was one of infatuation. His eyes closed, as if he had fallen into a temple of music. In Qin Yu's mind, the sounds of swords, spears, and halberds colliding rang out. Countless lights superimposed on each other, as if he were personally on the battlefield. A vast and endless killing aura turned into a deep roar that constantly impacted his mind, wanting to collapse his consciousness. It had to be said that in order to smoothly kill Qin Yu, Song Zhongyi had spent a great deal of time and effort. The three helpers he chose might not be the strongest, but when they cooperated with him, they could erupt with the most terrifying killing power. Mei Ruoyu's suppressive will made it so that he couldn't fully display his strength. Ji Yin formed an altar to suppress him, and the baby-faced cultivator attacked his mind to disintegrate his consciousness. With these three combined attacks, it was enough to weaken Qin Yu's strength by at least 50% or more, and he would complete the final strike. The seemingly common-looking ice sword was a reward that Lord Arctic Flame had bestowed upon him after he had performed a great merit. It contained a faint killing intent. As long as it pierced into flesh and blood, it could instantly destroy the soul. Puff! As the ice sword pierced through his chest, Song Zhongyi revealed a look of joy. Indeed, he hadn't let down his expectations. All of his painstaking preparations had caught him off guard, and he was able to completely crush this person to death. With a thought, the ice sword instantly dispersed. A terrifying chill spread throughout Qin Yu's body. With loud, cracking sounds, a massive layer of ice sealed him within. Song Zhongyi laughed. Fellow Taoist, have a safe journey. All of his anger and depression were swept away. All that was left over was pride and excitement. In order to kill this person, he had paid a great price. But as long as he could obtain the high-grade stone bead, it was worth it. Lord Arctic Flame would definitely be satisfied. Besides the ice sword, he might even be able to bestow upon him other formidable treasures. Mei Ruoyu, Ji Yin, and the baby-faced cultivator cupped their hands together. Congratulations, Brother Song. They were only responsible for killing people. As for who they killed, why they killed, and whether they deserved to be killed, they didn't care at all. Song Zhongyi bowed in return. You three can rest assured that I will immediately give you the reward I promised. But before that, I need to take him away first. With a wave of his hand, the frozen corpse flew over. But soon, Song Zhongyi's complexion changed. This was because his storage treasure couldn't absorb it. This was bad. Song Zhongyi's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to run away, but before he could respond, the ice in front of him exploded. Every piece of ice carried with it a terrifying strength. They tore through the air, emitting shrill whistling sounds as they smashed into the four people. A fist followed, closely behind. In the blink of an eye, it smashed into Song Zhongyi's chest. Qin Yu's icy cold voice echoed out. The power of ice annihilation. I once saw someone far stronger than you. Bang! With a loud explosion, Song Zhongyi's chest caved in. The sound of bones breaking caused one scalp to tingle. His body was sent flying away. Blood wildly gushed out from his nose and mouth, mixed with pieces of dark brown organs. Qin Yu's all-out punch had thoroughly destroyed his mortal body. Wild strength swept out. Bones, flesh, organs, and everything else began to rapidly wither and wither like flowers in midwinter. Qin Yu took a step forwards, catching up to Song Zhongyi's collapsing body in midair. He lifted a hand and thrust a finger between Song Zhongyi's eyebrows. Ah! A pained soul howled in everyone's hearts. As Qin Yu drew back his finger, a translucent soul phantom that had been pierced through by his fingertip was forcefully pulled out from between Song Zhongyi's eyebrows. This was a miniature version of Song Zhongyi, with a calamity immortal realm cultivation and a formidable will. His soul was able to condense into a semi-tangible state. Even if his mortal body died, as long as his soul was intact, he could quickly seize a new body and complete his resurrection. But now, Song Zhongyi no longer had this chance. Since Qin Yu had decided to kill him, he wouldn't leave any room for mercy. "Forgive me! Forgive me!" Song Zhongyi's soul pitifully begged. But as he saw Qin Yu's icy cold face not soften at all, his expression soon became fierce. "I am Lord Arctic Fire's subordinate, and I am sheltered by Lord Arctic Fire. If you kill me, you will inevitably suffer Lord Arctic Fire's revenge." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He finally understood why Song Zhongyi and the others had come looking for him today. Arctic Fire. It was Arctic Fire again. This seemed to be an extraordinary character. But so what? Since he had attacked today, there was no room for reconciliation. Qin Yu didn't believe that he would obtain Song Zhongyi's gratitude after letting him go. If that was the case, then he would kill him. Bang! Song Zhongyi's soul was torn apart by a formidable strength. Then, all of the soul fragments howled into Qin Yu's palm. After the cosmic sea-cross bell awakened, it had been complaining that it was hungry. It should be satisfied with the soul of a calamity immortal. However, the process of killing Song Zhongyi was smoother than Qin Yu imagined. It seemed that this calamity immortal realm cultivator was a level weaker than the calamity immortals of the outside world. This wasn't an illusion. The sealed stone world itself was broken and incomplete. If one became a calamity immortal there, they wouldn't be able to completely control the rules, and their strength would be correspondingly weakened. Run! Mei Ruoyu, Ji Yun, and the baby-faced cultivator all turned and fled without hesitation. He had withstood Song Zhongyi's ice sword strike and was even able to instantly kill him. Just how terrifying was his strength! Even if the three of them joined forces, they still didn't have the confidence to fight him. They were all experienced veterans. Even if they fled in panic, they still chose a direction and erupted with their fastest speed. As for who lived and who died, that would depend on their luck. Qin Yu was expressionless. He stepped forwards. The baby-faced cultivator's complexion changed, and he cursed inwardly. Why was it him? But this question clearly wouldn't be answered. The baby-faced cultivator stuffily coughed, and his complexion instantly paled. Bang! A layer of blood-red flames broke out from his body, wrapping around him. In that instant, his speed rose by several times. Song Zhongyi was absolutely stronger than him. In other words, as long as he was caught, he would die without a doubt. In the face of death, nothing else mattered. Qin Yu's pupils shrank. He shouted out, "Mimi!" Within his soul space, the cosmic sea-cross bell flashed with light, and the beautiful figure of a little girl appeared. Between her chubby hands was a round bead. "It's here." She raised her hand and bit her lips. "Qin Yu, you absolutely cannot fail. Don't let him run away." A majority of Song Zhongyi's soul force was here. If it weren't for the fact that she wanted to win with a small advantage, she would never have agreed to cooperate with Qin Yu. She clenched her teeth and threw out the bead. Shwa! The bead appeared between Qin Yu's fingers on its own. Without hesitation, he gripped it tightly. With a loud cracking sound, like a broken egg, a horrifying soul attack instantly erupted. Bang! In that moment, all living beings within 3,000 miles felt as if a rusty iron nail had ruthlessly pierced through their souls. The baby-faced cultivator in the blood-red light, as well as Meiruoyu and Ji-yun in the other two directions, all cried out in pain. Their fleeing bodies froze, and they plummeted to the ground like birds that had been shot. Qin Yu's figure instantly moved. His feet slammed into the ground, and there was a deep rumbling sound in the void. Faint traces of faint fluctuations appeared, and a powerful counterforce acted on his body. His entire body was like a cannonball as he smashed into the falling blood light. A fist punched out, and the dazzling blood-red light was pierced through. The baby-faced cultivator's face was filled with panic and despair, but he wasn't able to move at all. Qin Yu's fist smashed into his chest, piercing through his flesh and bone. Then his entire body hung on Qin Yu's arm. Within Qin Yu's soul space, Mei Mei excitedly cheered. The strength of the cosmic Seacross bell had instantly suppressed the baby-faced cultivator's soul. Then a sharp net swept out, cutting him into countless pieces. "Hurry, Qin Yu, there are still 2 more great meals. Don't let them run away." Qin Yu flicked his sleeves, and the baby-faced cultivator's corpse vanished from sight. He instantly turned around, his leg bones emitting faint creaking sounds. If it weren't for the fact that his demon body was powerful enough, this sort of high-intensity turning might have caused his entire leg bones to explode into powder. His figure flashed like a bolt of lightning, howling as he chased after Ji-yun. In truth, the one Qin Yu wanted to kill the most was Meiruoyu, but her will was far too strong. Perhaps she had already regained her composure, and Mei Mei didn't have time to create a second soul explosion ball. Ji-yun's soul stiffened. His consciousness roared out as he tried to reconnect with his mortal body. In this life or death moment, he erupted with an unprecedented strength. His vision began to recover, and his senses towards his body were rapidly reconstructed. No. He finally opened his eyes. But what appeared in front of him was Qin Yu's icy cold face. A fist rapidly grew larger in his sight. Bang! A large head directly exploded into pieces. Qin Yu's footsteps fell, and his body came to a sudden stop. He fiercely turned around. In his line of sight, Meiruoyu's body suddenly exploded. Whoosh! Whoosh! Countless beams of blood light shot out like arrows, rapidly fanning out in all directions. Qin Yu took a deep breath. His body tensed, and his heart wildly beat. After killing Song Zhongyi, the baby-faced cultivator, and Ji-yun, killing intent had filled his mind. His stagnant will had unknowingly begun to transform. If he killed Meiruoyu, he could break through his shackles and temper his will, stepping into a completely new level. The 4 people that had delivered themselves to his door today were the turning point that Qin Yu had been missing. But at this time, a cold and gloomy aura erupted from Qin Yu's soul. It was like a winter night had suddenly arrived, completely submerging him. Demon mark backlash. It sensed danger. It couldn't be bothered to continue gathering strength. It had to stop Qin Yu's will and complete this transformation. Otherwise, if it wanted to swallow Qin Yu again in the future, it would be far more difficult. Qin Yu frowned. He instantly gave up on chasing down Meiruoyu. With a flick of his sleeves, he put away Ji-yun's corpse and rapidly left. Qin Yu's field of vision darkened, and his aura began to violently fluctuate. Just before he reached his limit, Qin Yu sat down cross-legged and then vanished from sight. In the world replicated by the space-time lock, Qin Yu closed his eyes. Black energy tumbled around his body, and a demon head appeared between his eyebrows. Give up, stubborn human. It is absolutely impossible for you to resist the strength of a great demon. If we fuse our souls together, you will not disappear. Instead, you will obtain the powerful demon power that I possess. You and I will fuse together and become one of the most formidable beings in this world. You can fulfill all of your wishes, including taking away that pitiful woman from the immortal sect. I can help you suppress the strength of the sublime lost emotion code. As long as you agree, you can be with her forever. Do you hear me? Immediately give up resisting and do not attempt to contend with me. Otherwise, you will lose your final chance. Temptation, threat, and the roars of the demon mark reverberated through the soul space. Qin Yu revealed a pained expression. One could clearly see black lines drilling out from the demon head between his eyebrows, constantly spreading outwards. When these black lines covered Qin Yu's entire body and connected together, the demon mark would complete the consciousness swap. It would forcefully suppress Qin Yu's consciousness and obtain complete control over his soul. This was the method it had prepared for Qin Yu after several months of silence and accumulation. But because it had hastily erupted today, there were still flaws. Otherwise, the demon mark wouldn't have wasted so much time trying to weaken Qin Yu's will to resist on a psychological level. Seeing that Qin Yu didn't seem to be moved at all, the demon mark roared again and again, finally tearing apart its disguise. Petty bug, the demon strength will definitely erode your soul. At that time, I will turn you into a demon slave and make you live in pain for all eternity. I will ruthlessly torture you. I will use every method at my disposal to make you taste all the pain in the world. I will make you cry out in despair and tremble. I am incomparably looking forward to seeing you fall to your knees and howl in pain. Believe me, that day will soon arrive. Within the copied world, Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. He slowly said, "You are afraid." The demon mark's voice suddenly stopped. Then it wildly laughed. "You little bug, what did you say? Are you trying to make a joke? You are afraid." Qin Yu repeated this a second time. "Shut up. I am a great demon, the ruler of the strength of the dark side. My innate ability is to play with souls. From the day I fused into your body, your soul was destined to belong to me. You are afraid." The third time, Qin Yu's lips curled up. On his pale face there was even a faint smile. He shook his head and closed his eyes, as if he didn't want to argue about this matter any longer. This sort of matter-of-fact attitude, as if he had grasped the truth, caused the demon mark to fly into a rage. It wildly roared. Unfortunately, it couldn't obtain a response from Qin Yu. After a long time it fell silent. But between Qin Yu's eyebrows, the black lines that drilled out from the demon head began to grow even faster. It used its actions to respond. But in the end, after a day and night of stalemate, the demon mark exhausted all of its strength. On the surface of Qin Yu's body, the black lines retreated like a tide. They shrank back into the demon head and then vanished from sight. His black robes were soaked with sweat. Qin Yu opened his eyes. They were dark and gloomy, revealing a deep weariness. His taut heart relaxed. At this time, he didn't even want to move a finger. He focused his senses and determined that the demon mark had fallen silent. Then he fell backwards, falling into a deep sleep before he even touched the ground. This was the strongest backlash the demon mark had experienced so far. But this absolutely wasn't its limit. An even greater challenge was waiting for Qin Yu. However, as he slept, Qin Yu's body was undergoing some marvelous changes. His aura didn't change, but if one carefully sensed him, they would discover that he was becoming different. After killing 3 people in a row, his will had undergone a transformation. After a day and night of struggling with the backlash, he had smoothly completed the final step. If the demon mark knew that it had helped Qin Yu gather this precious turning point, it would likely commit suicide in regret. A sin caused by the heavens could be forgiven, but a sin brought upon oneself could not be avoided. Perhaps today, the demon mark's final fate had already been decided. Song Zhongyi had died. As one of Cold Flame's agents in the Sealed Stone world, once this news spread out, it caused a considerable stir. Towards the killer, everyone felt great admiration and also couldn't help but sympathize. No matter what the reason was, since Song Zhongyi had died, Cold Flame would definitely take action. If so, then the killer's fate had already been decided. Chapter 6:28. The Sealing Stone was supported by an immortal will and couldn't be destroyed. But by borrowing its original form and carefully arranging it, one could also obtain a relatively safe place to live. For instance, this 40 to 50-foot wide ceiling stone had a crack near the end. It was less than 2 fingers wide and seemed inconspicuous. If one didn't look carefully, it would be nearly impossible to discover. But if someone approached this crack and looked inside, they would discover that after it extended 3 or 4 feet in, it began to expand outwards. Finally, it formed a 20-foot wide space within the ceiling stone. Standing required one to bow, but to find such a safe place within the world of the ceiling stone, one really couldn't ask for more. Now, in the middle of the ceiling stone, a mass of blood light flashed, as if it were a blood egg gestating something. Suddenly, the blood light brightened. On the walls of the ceiling stone, an isolating strength activated, covering up the blood light. Pa! There was a sound like an eggshell shattering. The figure of a naked woman appeared. Her slender and perfect body was completely exposed to the air, her skin shimmering with an ivory luster. She reached out a hand, and the shattered shell of blood light condensed into a dress, covering her alluring body. She looked up, revealing Meiruoyu's pale face. She pursed her lips, her heart filled with fear. Just who was that cultivator? If the 4 of them joined forces, even if they faced a true supreme being, they would still be able to escape unscathed. But now, 3 of them had died and 1 was injured. If it weren't for her having the strongest will and being the first to break free, and if it weren't for the fact that she didn't hesitate to use the blood-soul explosion art, she feared she wouldn't have been able to escape. It was too terrifying. Meiruoyu didn't dare to provoke such an existence again. She just needed to recuperate from her wounds and let the storms of the outside world go. Once she avoided the limelight, she could go out again. Dreams were plentiful, but reality always liked to play a cruel joke on people. On the 2nd day of Meiruoyu's seclusion, a black-clothed old man arrived outside the ceiling stone. His face was lined with wrinkles, but his back was straight. He didn't seem old or decayed at all. Rather, he exuded a vast and boundless vitality. Within the sealed stone, Meiruoyu, who was recuperating in seclusion, suddenly opened her eyes. She saw a layer of white frost rapidly spreading within the sealed stone. The absolute coldness it contained caused her heart to tremble. In an instant, she guessed the identity of this person, the heaven-freezing polar flame, one of the supreme existences that stood at the peak of the sealed stone world. Meiruoyu didn't have time to be upset about how her hiding place was found. If she didn't get out, she would be frozen to death in this sealed stone. Meiruoyu stood up and transformed into a beam of blood-red light that flew out through the crack. She immediately bowed and said, "Junior greets, Lord Icy Flame." Heaven-freezing frigid fire was a nickname given to him by others because they feared his power. His real name was Wen Tsonggong, a very warm name. Of course, not many people knew this name, and a large portion of them died the day they found out about it. "Speak, where is the person who killed Song Zhongyi?" He didn't care who this person was or what their status was. This was because in Frostfire's heart, Qinyu was already a dead man. Meiruoyu instantly tossed aside all thoughts of staying out of this. Lord Icy Flame was personally asking her. If she dared to hesitate, then that was the same as seeking death. Lord Icy Flame, Junior doesn't know much about the killer, but this person is using the sealed stone to temper his will. Fellow Taoist Song, Zhongyi relied on this to find his whereabouts. Frostfire suddenly said, "From this day forth, you will receive my protection and replace Song Zhongyi's position. Meiruoyu, are you willing?" Meiruoyu fell to her knees. Subordinate greets Lord. Frostfire lightly said, "Come with me." He didn't care about Song Zhongyi at all, but he needed an explanation for this matter. Otherwise, who would be willing to risk their lives for him in the future? As one walked deeper into the sealed stone world, they would discover that just relying on a single person's strength was an extremely troublesome matter. In the world replicated by the space-time lock, Qinyu's fingers moved and his eyes slowly opened. After a brief daze, he quickly regained his focus. But at this time he suddenly froze. He lifted his hand and looked at his own fingers, as if he had discovered something unbelievable. After carefully sensing his surroundings and confirming that he hadn't made a mistake, a strange expression crossed Qin Yu's face. Soon he figured out the reason, and then he reared back his head and laughed. His laughter rolled out like waves, filled with joy and satisfaction. If that fellow with the demon mark knew this would happen, would he be so annoyed that he would tear off his head and kick it like a ball? The complete transformation of his will meant that Qin Yu's cultivation had stepped into a new level. Without accident, he would advance by leaps and bounds. The stronger he was, the lower the chances of the demon mark's backlash would be. Impatience surged in his heart. Qin Yu took a deep breath and sensed that there was nothing wrong with the outside world. Then his thoughts stirred and he dispersed the replicated world. Shua, his figure, appeared. As he looked up, he immediately locked onto a giant sealed stone. He strode forwards and entered the range of the sealed stone's suppression. His feet paused for a moment and he smiled. This was because to him, this suppression was no different from a gentle spring breeze. It had no effect at all. Qin Yu closed his eyes. Within his mind, that blurry figure rapidly appeared, becoming increasingly clear. His face, his hair, his clothes, his straight back, his unyielding eyes, his incomparably tyrannical temperament, all of it appeared at this moment. Qin Yu's mind trembled. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had an illusion that this figure was himself. Then this absurd illusion was like a seed that took root and sprouted in his mind, growing wantonly. After a lie was told 10 times, there was a chance that others would believe it. And with a strong psychological suggestion, it could even change one's subjective consciousness. Qin Yu fell into chaos. He felt that this figure in his mind was becoming increasingly familiar, and even the temperament of his appearance was the same as his own. Could I be this person's reincarnation? The moment this thought appeared, an angry roar sounded out in Qin Yu's mind. An ancient and boundless aura swept out, carrying with it a strong aura of time. The motionless figure suddenly turned his head, a dignified look in his eyes. Ancient. A deep shout sounded out, containing an irresistible will. Qin Yu's mind buzzed and fell into a blank state. But at this time, another strength poured into his mind. Although he couldn't break free from the suppression, he still regained his clarity of mind. At this time, Qin Yu was like a bystander. He stood high in the skies, overlooking everything that was occurring in the world of his mind. Another figure appeared at the end of his line of sight. He stepped forwards, each step causing the earth to tremble and pained groans to echo out. The giant's body was endless and towering. His shoulders were as high as the heavens, like a divine mountain that supported the heavens. Ancient race, this was the inheritance of the ancient race that Qin Yu had obtained. As a powerful and proud ancient race, they would never allow the inheritor of their will to be assimilated and tamed by others. I am the war race's 5th Chanyu. Across from him, the giant roared out, Ancient. This was his race and also his name. Just this word alone was enough to represent everything. The giant lifted his hand and clenched his fist. An incomparably wild strength erupted from his body, like a volcano. The war race's 5th Chanyu had a solemn expression. Facing this heaven-shocking fist, he didn't have any intention of dodging. He lifted his hand, clenched his fist, and met it. From the very start, both sides engaged in a frontal battle. This was because this wasn't a true battle, but a collision of their wills. There was nothing fancy about it, only a contest of absolute strength. The strong would win, and the weak would be destroyed. Besides this, there was no other possibility. Qin Yu's mind instantly fell into a shaking of destruction. An incomparably wild strength wildly rampaged about. Luckily, his consciousness had already separated from his mind, and he was now in the position of a bystander. Otherwise, this sort of intense collision might have shattered his consciousness. What the ancient race giant represented was the unyielding inheritance of the ancient race. They were born to support the heavens and earth, and even after death, they wouldn't fall. As for the fifth Chanyu, what he possessed was a formidable will that fought the heavens and earth, one that ruled over all else. To a certain degree, both sides had reached the pinnacle of themselves, to exist eternally in the world, to be indestructible, to never fade away. But everything in this world had a limit. The so-called indestructible was bound to be limited to a very large range. If it continued to rise without restriction, there would come a time when it would break through this limit. At that time, it would inevitably be destroyed. The ancient race's inheritance was like this, and the war race's will was also like this. Thus, as the two sides fought in Chinyu's mind, it was inevitable that both sides would suffer losses. Motes of light flew out from the bodies of the war races, fifth Chanyu and the ancient race giant. The former was a pure silver white, proud and cold. As for the ancient race giant, it was a deep gray, a fusion of black and white. This represented that they could never be erased. The silver white and gray motes of light, even though they had separated from their main bodies, still maintained their powerful instincts. They were like falling snowflakes. As they fell, they didn't forget to kill each other. You bite me, I bite you. They hated that they couldn't swallow each other and transform each other into themselves. Beneath the hidden dome, the fifth Chanyu and the ancient race giant continued to battle. They were like two towering gods. Each time they collided, there would be thunderclaps. They didn't discover that the snowflakes that fell to the ground were slowly changing color, as if they were fusing together. That's right, they were fusing together. The silver white and gray motes crazily attacked and swallowed each other, but they weren't able to quickly absorb and transform each other. As a result, the color between them became more and more similar. It was a kind of gray with a metallic hue that leaned toward silence. On the ground, within the layer of gray snow, a mystical change was occurring. Chinyu's consciousness could clearly see all of this. Even though he had lost connection to his body, he still felt his mouth go dry. Although he didn't know what the consequences of the fusion between the silver white and gray motes would be, his intuition told him that this was an unimaginably great good fortune for him. Within the world of his mind, more and more snowflakes appeared. The figures of the war races, fifth Chanyu and the ancient race giant, became blurry. Suddenly, the gray snow on the ground seemed to come alive. Waves rose up, pushing the snow towards them from all directions. A snow mountain rapidly piled up. It grew higher and higher until it erupted with a terrifying, swallowing strength. This strength simultaneously covered the war races, fifth Chanyu and the ancient race giant, as if invisible shackles were binding them. No one can fuse with me, no one. The fifth Chanyu roared. He reached out a hand towards the snow mountain, and it violently trembled. The strength that belonged to the fifth Chanyu wanted to separate and break free. Across from him, the ancient race giant suddenly looked up into the skies. Chinyu's consciousness quivered. This was because he discovered that the ancient race giant's eyes were clearly on his body. This giant had already sensed his existence. He had even discovered the snowflakes that were fusing with him. Please remember, you are an ancient, and you will always be an ancient. A deep and low voice resounded in the world of his mind. The fifth Chanyu angrily roared, "Have you gone insane?" The ancient race giant smiled. He stretched out his arms, giving up all resistance and allowing the swallowing strength of the snow mountain to take him away. The giant fell onto the snow mountain. Starting from his feet, he sank into it, becoming one with it. From start to finish, he looked into the skies, looked into Chinyu's eyes, and a single will was transmitted from his eyes. Remember my words. You are an ancient, and you will always be an ancient. Bang! The snow mountain wildly rose in volume, instantly reaching the same height as the skies. The war race's fifth Chanyu roared out again and again, but he couldn't resist the swallowing strength. He was slowly pulled in. His body, touched the snow mountain. A pair of hands drilled out from within, pulling the war race's fifth Chanyu in. At this time, all fluctuations disappeared from Chinyu's mind, falling into a strange stillness. Thump! Thump! The sound of a beating heart echoed out from the snow mountain. At first it was extremely weak, but it soon became stronger, like the beating of a great drum. Outside, in front of the giant sealing stone, Chinyu sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. His body seemed incomparably small amongst the many giant sealing stones. But at this time, the feeling he gave off was incomparably lofty, like a divine god in the clouds, noble and inviolable. Hum! Hum! The sealing stone began to tremble. At the same frequency, it transmitted out a wild will. In the next moment, it completely erupted. The will was destroyed. A terrifying, annihilating strength smashed into Chinyu's body. But at this moment, his body was like a silent and hard boulder. No matter how the waves struck him, he didn't move at all, nor was he injured in the least. This was because from this moment onwards, while Chinyu might be far inferior to the war race's fifth Chanyu in terms of absolute strength, in terms of pure will, they stood in the same position. In the world of consciousness, the snow mountain suddenly collapsed. A figure walked out from within. He wasn't tall, but it seemed as if he could step on the world beneath his feet. He wore black robes and stood tall and straight. His appearance was completely the same as Chinyu's. Shwa! Chinyu opened his eyes. A brilliant divine light flashed in them, like two stars in the night sky, attracting the attention of all. An indescribable temperament exuded from his body, as if he were one with the heavens and earth, as if he had transcended the heavens and earth. No matter how much time passed, no matter how much the world changed, it was impossible to erase him. This was an absolute and pure strength of will. This was a change that no one expected. The confrontation between the fifth Chanyu and the ancient was the same as Chinyu stepping on the shoulders of two giants, reaching an inconceivable boundary in a single go. He looked up at the sealing stone in front of him. That silent, oppressive feeling had completely vanished. Chinyu took a deep breath and calmed his surging heart. He stepped forwards to the sealing stone and placed a hand on it. It was like he had pierced through a leather bag of water. A warm current gushed out from the sealing stone, fusing into Chinyu's body and being absorbed by him. Kacha! Kacha! Cracks rapidly spread out like a spider web, finally covering every inch of the sealing stone. Then, the supposedly indestructible sealing stone shattered in front of Chinyu. It didn't break into pieces, but dissipated into powder, vanishing without a trace. Thus, the sealing stone nebula, that had existed for 1 trillion years and had never changed in the least, suddenly lost a piece on this day. Chinyu looked at the emptiness in front of him, his complexion dignified. His first thought was that he absolutely could not allow anyone to see this. Otherwise, he would immediately become the public enemy of all living beings in the sealing stone world. The reason was simple. All living beings that entered the sealing stone world did so in order to use the sealing stone to temper their will and constantly strengthen themselves. But Chinyu's appearance was a complete and utter disaster for them. If the sealing stone was destroyed, wouldn't there be no meaning in staying here? Over the endless years, there had been less than 10 living beings that had been able to leave the sealing stone world. But the difference between having a trace of hope and utter despair was like the difference between the heavens and earth. No, it wasn't that he couldn't be seen by others, but that he couldn't directly destroy the sealing stone in the future. Otherwise, if this sort of emptiness appeared too often, it would inevitably be discovered by others. Chinyu took a deep breath. He turned and flew to another sealing stone. After preparing for several breaths of time, he slowly reached out a hand and pressed it down. In the next moment, a flow of heat gushed out once more. He roared out in his heart, "Stop!" The flow of heat that gushed out came to a sudden stop. The sealing stone trembled several times before finally preserving itself. You compared the heat flow that had been absorbed. There was only 20 to 30% of it left. Although the sealing stone was intact, the will suppression it possessed was only 20 to 30% of what it originally was. He relaxed a little. It was fine as long as the sealing stone could be preserved. Even if someone discovered that the will contained within it had weakened, it should be able to delay for some time. He hoped that this period of time would last as long as possible. Every day that passed, Qin Yu's strength would clearly rise. This was because to him the sealing stone world was a hunting ground filled with food. As long as he could digest it, he could eat to his heart's content. Looking at the endless sealing stone, Qin Yu's eyes blazed with anticipation. Time was precious, and he couldn't waste it. Then let's begin. The sealing stone was like a mountain, and the palace was built atop it. At this time, this massive palace was covered by an invisible pressure and deathly silence. Mei Ruoyu stood behind Frost Flame, her complexion becoming increasingly pale. 5 days had passed. Countless cultivators had flocked to search for Qin Yu, but even now they hadn't been able to find any trace of him. He was like a mass of fog that had evaporated from sight. In particular, during these 5 days, for some unknown reason, several regional willpower destruction had erupted. Frost Flame's group of cultivators had terrible luck, and they had suffered heavy losses twice. Although Frost Flame didn't speak, his aura became increasingly heavy, as if he would erupt at any moment. This shouldn't be the case. Where could he have escaped to? Could it be that there's someone behind this, and there's a hidden conspiracy behind this? Mei Ruoyu's thoughts raced. Although she had a dark and gloomy soul that wished to destroy the world, she still cherished her own life. If things continued like this, and she couldn't find Qin Yu, she feared that she would become a tool for Frost Flame to vent his anger. As the fear in her heart grew heavier and heavier, a beam of light flew in from outside the hall. It floated in front of Frost Flame. The light scattered to reveal a black jade archive. There was news. Mei Ruoyu's eyes brightened. Frost Flame reached out a hand and took the jade slip. In the next moment, his eyes flashed open, and he said, "Mei Ruoyu, are you sure that the place where you fought with that person that day was correct?" Mei Ruoyu was stunned. She hurriedly said, "My lord, this subordinate is willing to use my head as a guarantee that I absolutely won't lie to you." A cold light rose in Frost Flame's eyes. With a loud crack, the jade archive in his hand shattered into powder. He stood up, his voice low and horrifying. "Interesting. I'm really interested to know which old friend is scheming against me." Qin Yu's whereabouts had been discovered. He had gone 1,000 miles deeper than the place Mei Ruoyu had mentioned. It seemed like an unremarkable distance, but this was the sealed stone world. Every step towards the center required a tremendous amount of effort. In a short 6 days, no one had been able to accomplish this. Then there was only one explanation. The person who killed Song Zhongyi had emerged from the depths of the sealed stone world. With a flick of his sleeves, Frost Flame wrapped Mei Ruoyu up and stepped forwards. His figure was like a bolt of lightning, his speed beyond imagination. No matter who his opponent was, he had the confidence to face them. If he didn't even have this much confidence, then he wouldn't be worthy of being called the heaven-freezing, frigid flame. Perhaps he had been too quiet these past years, and some people had already forgotten the strength and might he possessed. Then he would take advantage of this chance to let everyone clearly see that he, the heaven-freezing, frigid flame when Songgong hadn't aged yet. Qin Yu was expressionless. He looked at the 2 shivering cultivators kneeling in front of him, his eyes cold. "You've been spying on me for a long time. Are you here for me?" He paused for a moment and then continued, "Heaven-freezing, frigid flame?" Seeing the 2 people stiffen, Qin Yu nodded. It really is him. He and this great figure he had never met before actually had some sort of relationship. As soon as he entered the sealed stone world, he encountered his subordinates trying to steal the stone bead. After that, the several conflicts that occurred were mostly related to this person. Now, this person had come to find him. Without saying anything, it was obvious that it was because of the death of Song Zhongyi and the others. not to mention right or wrong. One had to bear the consequences of killing someone. Rather than being entangled in this mess, it was better to settle everything once and for all. If he could kill Frostflame, then no one would disturb him for a long time. Time was precious to the current Chinyu. He didn't want to waste any energy on something like this. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't kill Frostflame, this battle would be the best chance to test his current strength. He wanted to see just how strong he was compared to the peak great figures in the sealed stone world. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lightly said, "Send a message to Frostflame that I don't have much time. Have him hurry." The two terrified cultivators were stunned. They had lived for so many years, and this was the first time they had seen such an arrogant character. Did he really not know just how terrifying Lord Frostflame was? Although they were fish on the chopping block right now, in their hearts they simultaneously sentenced Chinyu to death. Lord Frostflame would absolutely make him despair. The rapidly moving Frostflame suddenly stopped. He lifted a hand and grasped the jade archive that was howling towards him. Probing it with his divine sense, he could clearly see that Frostflame's breathing had deepened. He instantly emitted a terrifying aura. Good, very good. It's been many years since anyone has dared to anger me like this. Every word Frostflame spat out emitted a dense aura. Since you are so sincere, I will not disappoint you. Bang! A dreadful aura erupted. His speed instantly rose. Wherever he went, frost fell from the void and thick ice formed on the surface of the sealed stone. Chapter 6, 29. The temperature in the air crazily fell. Snowflakes appeared out of thin air, filling every corner of one's vision in the time it took to breathe. Every snowflake contained the power of absolute frost. Once it came into contact with any external object, it would instantly explode. The two cultivators kneeling on the sealing stone had just revealed a look of joy on their faces when it turned into deep fear and despair. As the snowflakes fell on their bodies, the icy cold aura instantly destroyed all of their vitality. Ice rapidly spread and thickened, wrapping around their corpses and turning them into two ice sculptures. He's here. Chinyu opened his eyes. His gaze pierced through the snow and fell onto the approaching figure. Mei Ruoyu followed behind. As she saw Chinyu, she froze. In just a few days, the feeling this man gave her had undergone an earth-shaking change. In the past, she had only felt Chinyu's formidable strength and his strange and terrifying methods. But today, with just a single glance, endless fear rose up from the depths of her heart, let alone surrounding and killing him. She feared she didn't even have the courage to attack him. This was an absolute suppression on the level of will. If it weren't for the fact that she deeply remembered Chinyu's calm eyes, she feared she would have thought he had been possessed by someone else. Frostfire frowned. He could sense Chinyu's aura even more clearly. As soon as they met, he was able to determine that this person's will was in no way inferior to his own. But this face was strange. He sneered inwardly. To these old fellows that had lived for many years, changing their appearance and even changing their aura was a very easy matter. But no matter how well they hid themselves, as soon as they fought, they would naturally be exposed. He glanced at Mei Ruoyu. This woman was very beautiful, and he was a bit moved by her. It was just that he hadn't been interested in her these past 2 days. But her current expression seemed a bit off. Before Frostfire could think further, Mei Ruoyu regained her composure and quickly nodded. Frostfire frowned. Go a little further away. Mei Ruoyu respectfully nodded. She lowered her head and took several steps back, a panicked look on her face. Her intuition suddenly gave birth to a feeling that this was her only chance to survive. Since Frostfire wanted her to go a little further, then she would go as far as she could. Although Hanhua liked women, his cultivation base had reached this stage, and he had long since stopped thinking about such things. As a result, he didn't notice anything unusual about Mei Ruoyu's back. He looked at Chinyu and said in a low voice, I believe that in all these years I have always abided by the rules. I wonder how I have offended fellow Taoists that you would want to kill my subordinates? Qin Yu shook his head. I don't know you. Icy Flame frowned. In this place, you and I are facing each other. Fellow Taoist, there is no point in hiding anything. Qin Yu lightly said, that is the truth. Han's frown deepened. It didn't seem like he was lying, but since he didn't know him, why was he making things difficult for him? He felt that things were a bit different from what he had imagined. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by Qin Yu. Your Excellency Frostflame, please enlighten me. The formidable aura within Qin Yu's body wildly erupted. The air thickened and an invisible oppressive strength descended. Cold Flame coughed and his complexion paled. You killed my subordinate cultivators. Fellow Taoist should give me an explanation. Did she think he was afraid? Ridiculous. The pride of a powerhouse left him disdainful of saying anything more. Cold Flame lifted a hand and pointed forward. Between the heavens and earth, the tumbling snowflakes suddenly fell still. He wanted him to attack, but the truth was that he had already made his move the moment he arrived. Of the still snowflakes, each one was a node. These countless nodes connected together, forming an array formation that sealed the world in ice. Moreover, this array formation secretly contained the great Tao of nature and the heavens and earth. It contained an endless might, unless a strength suddenly erupted that surpassed the limits of what it could withstand. Only then could the array formation be broken. Otherwise, one would be suppressed within until their strength was exhausted and they were corroded to death by the cold. With the world sealed in ice, Qin Yu was naturally no exception. The heaven-freezing frigid flame truly lives up to its reputation. As he praised, Qin Yu lifted his arm. As he moved, intense cracking sounds rang out one after another. Cracks appeared all around his body, distorting light and causing Qin Yu's figure to turn blurry. Cold Flame's pupils shrank. As the saying went, one tiny clue was enough. From Qin Yu's casual movement, he could sense the terrifying strength he possessed. This great ice-sealing array formation couldn't trap him. Cold Flame sucked in a deep breath. In his heart, he raised Qin Yu's threat level by another level. He stepped forwards and pressed his hand down. The array formation he laid down naturally didn't imprison him, but whether or not he was in the array formation, the strength that the array formation could erupt with was completely different. As his palm pressed down, snowflakes lit up. Crystal clear light rapidly spread out, connecting together to form a giant palm. Qin Yu was beneath this palm. He raised his head and swung his fist to meet the incoming hand. Bang! A muffled roar came from the world, followed by a violent shaking. The floating ceiling stone hummed as it withstood the impact of the strength. Countless cracks erupted from the point where the two sides collided. They rapidly spread in all directions, covering the entire array formation. Qin Yu reached out a hand, and the cracks in the skies exploded. Countless shattered ice crystals were swept away by strong winds, turning into silver white. Cold Flame's complexion became increasingly grim. At this time, he could confirm that this cultivator in front of him wasn't someone he knew. Could he really be a newcomer that had just entered the world of the sealed stone? But how could that be possible? From the time he came into conflict with Song Zhongyi, less than a year had passed. It was impossible for him to have passed the sealed stone's test and come here. But he was here. A burning heat gradually appeared in the depths of Cold Flame's eyes. If there was an abnormality, there must be a demon behind it. And if he could obtain this demon, then not only might he be able to solve his puzzles, but he might even obtain a lucky chance. Please remember, I am Cold Flame who freezes the heavens. My name is Wen Tsonggong. Qin Yu smiled. Fellow Taoist, one seems to be very confident. Cold Flame lightly said, You will know soon enough. Although words were useful, what truly determined the overall situation was always absolute strength. He stepped forwards. This was originally a trump card I prepared to increase my ranking. But my intuition tells me that I won't regret using it on you. The reason I was able to live to this day and have my current cultivation is because I have relied on several critical moments to make judgments based on my intuition. I hope that my intuition is still correct this time. If so, I ask you to die. Cold Flame lifted his hand. Faint threads of ice gushed out from his fingers, weaving together and turning into an ice spear. As the ice spear condensed, Cold Flame's face rapidly paled. Even the palm that held the ice spear began to be covered in ice and snow, rapidly spreading up his arm. This would cause a backlash and injury to the person who used it. In particular, the one who used it was someone like Cold Flame, someone with a profound cultivation. The might of this ice spear could be imagined. Even before it shot out, Chinyu felt as if he had fallen into an icy lake, and this horrifying chill seeped into his flesh and blood, reaching all the way to his marrow. In fact, Chinyu's soul even began to shiver. This wasn't fear, but an instinctive reaction to this absolute chill. Cold Flame took a step forwards and bent his knees. He leaned backwards and thrust out his arm. Whoosh! The ice spear was like a phantom. It instantly pierced through space, arriving in front of Chinyu. In the void behind him, the phantom of a world of ice and snow appeared. Everything was pure white, and one couldn't see the end of it. Giant snowy mountains pierced through the horizon with a cold and aloof attitude. To use the strength of a single strike to affect reality and form a world projection. This was the manifestation of strength reaching the limit. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. With a loud shout, he stepped forwards and punched out with his fist. Roar! Within the world of the sealed stone, a deep roar sounded out. It seemed to cross the river of time and carried with it the boundless aura of the endless wilderness. Unwilling, unyielding, 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 struggling against the heavens and earth. A terrifying figure appeared behind Chinyu. Its feet stepped on the earth, its head in the skies, its eyes like the sun and moon, its aura wild and violent, looking down on all directions. Synchronizing with Chinyu's movements, the terrifying figure lifted its arm and punched out with an incomparably large fist like a mountain. The inheritance of the ancient race. Originally, this strength of inheritance had been in a dormant state. This was because with Chinyu's current cultivation, he wasn't able to activate it. But after the ancient race inheritance fused with the war race's fifth Chanyu's will, both sides had transformed into a strength that Chinyu could control, and the ancient race inheritance had been unsealed. Transforming into the ancient race was the ultimate combat form. In order to prevent his identity as an ancient from being revealed, Chinyu wouldn't use it unless he was in a life or death situation. But this didn't mean that he couldn't use the strength of the ancient race inheritance. For instance, although this punch seemed simple, the truth was that it summoned the phantom of an ancient ancestor. By fusing its strength into this punch, its might was similarly astonishing. The ice spear violently trembled. The humming sounds superimposed on each other like a shrill howl. A small crack appeared on the spear point. It rapidly spread upwards until the end of the spear pierced through the entire shaft. Impossible! Cold Flame roared in alarm and anger. Bang! The ice spear shattered. The world of ice and snow behind it began to collapse and collapse. The snowy mountains that pierced through the horizon were cut in half. Endless stretches of snowy plains tumbled about, turning into a raging black sea. Chinyu's eyes suddenly shrank. This was because within this world phantom that was falling into destruction, he could see the existence of a life form. This was a giant ice crystal dragon. It roared as it flew out from a shattered ice mountain. Its giant eyes were filled with fear and anger. It swung its tail and soared into the skies, trying to escape the collapsing world. But in the end, it was sucked into the shattered space. This was only a world phantom formed from supernatural abilities, so how could there be a life form within it? But now wasn't the time to think about this. He suppressed this thought and looked at Cold Flame, a cold light flowing in his eyes. He never minded killing others, especially his enemies. If he didn't kill them when he had the chance, that was the greatest irresponsibility towards his own life. At this time, Cold Flame's appearance was incomparably miserable. The ice spear had shattered, the world of ice and snow had been destroyed, and he had suffered a terrifying backlash. Blood flowed out from every orifice of his head. The dark red blood was thick and viscous, smearing his entire face with a fierce and pitiful expression. Meeting Qin Yu's gaze, Cold Flame stiffened. An unprecedented shadow covered his entire body. Cold Een, icy cold, and a despairing aura gathered together, finally turning into an extremely rich smell of death. Cold Flame wasn't unfamiliar with the smell, but this time was different. He suddenly felt that he wouldn't be able to escape today's calamity. His life's experiences flashed through his mind. Cold Flame straightened his back. His eyes were incomparably bright, like two masses of blazing flames. As a tribulation immortal cultivator, a powerhouse that had rampaged through the sealed stone world for hundreds of thousands of years, he had his own pride and dignity. Even death couldn't make him become petty and insignificant. Since he was going to die, he would die a glorious death. He would use all of his strength to draw a perfect end to his life. Qin, you could feel the change in Cold Flame's aura. A trace of respect appeared in his eyes. There were trillions of lives in this world, but how many of them could face death head-on? Even if he was an enemy, he still deserved respect. A terrifying aura fluctuation erupted from Cold Flame's body. A layer of white flames appeared, wrapping around him. The flames blazed, but there was no heat at all. Instead, the temperature between the heavens and earth began to fall at an astonishing rate. The name of the heaven-freezing Cold Flame came from this scene. Unfortunately, this should be the last time it would appear in the world. I am Wen Song. With a roar, the white flames instantly flourished. Cold Flame's body that was wrapped up within directly melted into it. The uncontrolled white flames surged out like a broken dam, instantly sweeping through the surrounding 5,000 miles. Within this range, everything was sealed in ice. The ice that formed was pure white without the least bit of impurities, including all the sealed stones within 5,000 miles. The entire world turned into an incomparably massive block of ice. A calm voice echoed out from within the ice. I have already remembered your name. Fellow Taoist, Wen Song, please have a safe journey. Mei Ruiyu ran 10,000 miles away before she stopped. She turned to look at the area that was covered by the sealed stone world, and her eyes filled with even more panic. If it had only been a trace of fear before, then now it had grown strong and healthy, turning into a black fog that covered the skies and submerging her mind. Every breath of time passed incomparably slow. The sound of her heartbeat became increasingly clear in her ears. Mei Ruiyu could clearly feel goosebumps forming on her skin. Suddenly, her eyes widened and she spat out a mouthful of blood. It was like an iron rod had been ruthlessly stabbed into her head, and she couldn't help but cry out in pain. The contract rune she had formed with Lord Cold Flame had now shattered and dissipated. There was no need to explain what this meant. Cold Flame had died. He had actually died, although she had a foreboding premonition. When this truly happened, great waves rose up in her mind. For a time, she even suppressed the pain she was feeling. Heaven-freezing Cold Flame, he was a character whose fame resounded through the highest heavens. Within the sealed stone world, he was a formidable existence that everyone knew of. But today, such a majestic mountain had collapsed without any warning. Endless fear filled Mei Ruiyu's eyes. This was especially true when she thought about how she had tried to surround him with Song Zhongyi and the others. Run. She didn't have a second thought. Right now, all she wanted to do was run as far away as possible and hide herself. But just as she turned around, Mei Ruiyu froze. From her widened eyes and the cold sweat that covered her forehead, It was clear this wasn't her original intention. Pa! A delicate bloody hole appeared between Mei Royu's eyebrows. The light in her eyes dimmed and her aura rapidly dissipated. Qin Yu stepped forwards. Fellow Taoist, when Tsonggong seems to be interested in you. Then, on the road to the Yellow Springs, I would like to ask you to accompany him. On this day, the entire sealed stone world fell into turmoil. Heaven-freezing cold flame had died, and all the cultivators that had formed contracts with him had been severely wounded. This news instantly spread out. The name of the mysterious black-robed cultivator swept through the entire sealed stone world in the shortest period of time. Countless people praised and revered him. But this sensational event soon lost its follow-up. This was because the mysterious black-robed cultivator that killed Cold Flame didn't appear to take over the influence he left behind. Instead, as the news spread out, he went into hiding and disappeared. Countless people guessed. Finally, they came to a conclusion. Even if Cold Flame was killed, the mysterious black-robed cultivator must have been severely wounded and had gone into hiding to heal. Perhaps he had even perished together with Cold Flame. Whether it was right or wrong, it was a fact that the mysterious black-robed cultivator hadn't appeared. After waiting for a period of time, the other supreme elders began to move, dividing up everything that Cold Flame had left behind. This process certainly wouldn't be too harmonious. A storm of blood and gore immediately rose up in the sealed stone world, and as this turmoil arrived, Qin Yu's figure appeared in a bustling trading market. This was an area where the sealed stones were close to each other. There was a sealed stone world every few hundred feet, and each sealed stone world had at most 3 or 4 stalls. A world with cultivators meant there was demand, and demand would inevitably drive transactions to appear. This was the place where the living beings of the sealed stone world came to exchange for what they needed. Over the endless years, the sealed stone world had already evolved its own set of survival rules. Some cultivators knew that they had no hope of cultivating the great Tao. In order to survive, they had no choice but to make changes. For instance, farmers who specialized in growing spirit plants, refiners who specialized in refining artifacts, doctors who treated people, and of course, there were also women who sold their flesh and skin in exchange for a source of income. Thus, the trading market was bustling with activity. It was a prosperous scene, not dull or dull at all. Of course, in all transactions, the most basic and most popular currency was still the stone bead. It was the key to everyone surviving in the sealed stone world. The only thing worth rejoicing about was that the frequency at which the destroyed will would erupt wasn't high. Qin Yu sent away a woman that was nearly plastered to his body. Then he swept his eyes around and soon found his target. On top of the sealed stone world that was 100 feet high, there was a 3-story wooden building. It couldn't be considered exquisite or grand, but in the sealed stone world where materials were scarce, this was already considered a great deal. From time to time, cultivators flew in and out of the wooden building. It was clear that business was booming. Qin Yu stepped forward and soon arrived outside the wooden building. He looked up and then walked in. A maid immediately welcomed him. It was a shy and young girl. She looked at him and quickly lowered her head. She said in a low voice, "Welcome guest. Is there anything you need?" Qin Yu lightly said, "I want exchange for some stone beads." That's right, the reason he came here was for the stone beads. This had to start from the day when Icy Flame was killed. Qin Yu had taken away the stone beads that he and Mei Ryu had left behind. During this process, he had inadvertently discovered a secret. The stone beads contained a will that was far more formidable than that of the sealed stone world. Of course, this formidable didn't refer to quantity, but to absolute quality. For example, if Qin Yu absorbed the strength of 3 sealed stones, he would be full. He could only wait for them to be digested before continuing to absorb, and the energy he would obtain would be 1. Then, absorbing the strength of 10 stone beads wouldn't be a problem. Moreover, each stone bead would provide him with energy far greater than one. And the most important point was that absorbing the strength of the stone beads wouldn't leave behind any hidden dangers. This was what attracted Qin Yu the most. Although he had killed Icy Flame and the process hadn't been too difficult, it was also because of this that Qin Yu didn't dare to be complacent. He didn't believe that he could easily reach the peak of the sealed stone world. Moreover, before Icy Flame died, he had said that the ice spear was a method he had prepared to attack the echelon. Although he didn't know what the so-called echelon was, it was clear that the sealed stone world still existed, a level that Qin Yu hadn't touched upon yet. The life forms on this level were absolutely terrifying. The main reason he spoke so much was to explain something. If there was a better method to enhance his will, Qin Yu would rather give up on the sealed stone world. That was simply far too dangerous. If he wasn't careful, he might draw a calamity upon himself. Since the stone beads were the best choice for cultivation, Qin Yu began to study them carefully. Without spending too much effort, he learned some general information from a cultivator. Thus he came here. The young maid across from him hurriedly said, "Guest, please follow me." She turned and walked away. After several steps, she stopped, her face flushed red. I'm sorry. I went the wrong way." She looked as if she were about to cry at any moment. Qin Yu revealed a look of surprise. He had already noticed that the other maids all around them emitted a dusty aura. Could it be that his luck was so good that he had encountered a legendary young chick? Or was this her method of attracting attention? His thoughts turned and then scattered. No matter what the truth was, he didn't care. He directly said, "It's fine. Lead the way." The young maid was moved to tears. She nodded again and walked in the opposite direction. Soon, Qin Yu was brought to a counter on the first floor. He waited for the cultivator in front of him to stand up and leave. Then, the young maid led him to a chair. "My lord, this guest wishes to exchange for some stone beads." The young maid bowed and retreated to the side. Although it was a semi-open partition, it was clear that it had been specially arranged. Once one entered, they could completely isolate out the sound of the outside world, and the images were blurred so that they couldn't be seen clearly. The middle-aged cultivator behind the counter paled. He greedily glanced at the young maid standing to the side and smiled. "May I ask how the guest wishes to exchange?" Qin Yu maintained his composure. "May I ask what the exchange rate is?" The middle-aged cultivator said, 10 low-grade beads can be exchanged for a medium-grade bead. 10 medium-grade beads can be exchanged for a high-grade bead. Of course, the market price for high-grade beads has always been higher. If the guest wishes to make a move, the most we can give is 12 medium-grade beads. Qin Yu frowned. "So it's like that." The middle-aged cultivator's smile faded. "If the guest hasn't decided yet, you may come back after some time." Qin Yu glanced at him. "I heard that there are other methods to exchange for stone beads at half price. I wonder if that is true?" The middle-aged cultivator's eyes brightened. "Of course it is. Guest, our Chamber of Commerce will send a ship to the bewildering fog sea every once in a while. As long as the guest is willing to board the ship and help the Chamber of Commerce handle some simple matters, not only can you obtain the preferential conditions of half price, but the Chamber of Commerce will also give you 5 medium-grade beads for free." Qin Yu hesitated. "Will it be dangerous?" The middle-aged cultivator hesitated for a moment. "Of course, there will be dangers. Otherwise, we wouldn't give such generous rewards. But our Chamber of Commerce has rich experience in entering the bewildering fog sea. As long as we are careful, there shouldn't be any major problems. There just happens to be a ship that is about to set out and there aren't many spots left. If the guest wishes to, you must make a decision as soon as possible."